4, 3, 2, 1.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
A confirmed attack is taking place against the United States. Aliens from an unknown location have been reported in multiple states.
We are controlling transmission.
There is another world that awaits, far beyond what we can see and feel. A place that's anything but ordinary.
What you believe might not be. Step into the zone of the vast unknown. UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, conspiracies and cover-ups. Into the Parabnormal we go with Jeremy Scott.
It's always a great learning about Bigfoot, and it's a squatching weekend here from Baker City. You know, doing almost 700 episodes of this program, which we will celebrate episode number 700 tomorrow from the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest. I'm always amazed at what new I can learn, particularly about the subjects we discuss, whether it's anything between the paranormal and the abnormal, and of course Bigfoot is right in the smack dab middle of that. I thought I had, well, I'm not saying I'm a know-it-all, but there's a lot that has surprised me that I have learned in less than a day of the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest going on, between the VIP dinner last night and the conversations that we've had so far today. I'm just amazed that there's so much to this very, very complex subject that still the mainstream wants to poo-poo and wants to label those of us who take this seriously as in some special niche crowd, whether it's the tinfoil hat variety or the woo-woo crowd or the supernatural. The fact is, this is a very, very, very complex subject. It is a more complex subject each and every time I talk about Bigfoot than I ever could imagine. So today, live from the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest in Baker City, Oregon, we welcome the best of the best who have assembled here in what was the former capital of the state of Oregon many, many years ago. Really is a lovely town. And I'm so honored to welcome Robert Leiterman up here, our first guest here on the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Festival live broadcast. He is with the Bluff Creek Project, a former park ranger. In fact, here's his book, The Bluff Creek Project, which details much of what him and his team have found. If Bluff Creek sounds familiar, you may be saying, well, that's where the Patterson-Gimlin footage was filmed by Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin more than 50 years ago, and you would be right. That's down there in California, and so we welcome Robert to the program. Robert, so good to have you here. Robert Leiterman.
Hey, thanks a lot for inviting me. I thought I was coming here for a refill of my soda, and I realized, no, it's the interview.
You're too late for the refill. You're going to have to do this thing, parched or not parched.
All right, I'm here. I have a gift for you.
You do?
It's a vial of Bluff Creek sand.
Wow. Wow.
Patty probably walked on that stuff.
This is priceless. Patty probably walked on this stuff. So what is this that I'm holding?
You're holding a sample of soil. What it is at the film site, there's an accumulation of alluvial floodplain.
Okay.
In 64 it flooded. And so there's an accumulation of silt. This is some of that silt. And what I had to do is I had to sift through it and get rid of some of the larger particulates to get smaller particulates. And then I put it in the jar just for you, this little vial here.
Wow.
Because I figured
that's mine for the keeping?
That is yours.
I'm going to treasure that. Bubble wrap it or something. So
yeah.
When did you first get involved? Well, let's go back. Before you even got involved in the Bluff Creek Project, how did you get involved in Bigfoot research?
That's a good question. I get asked that a lot. Well, as a kid, you always follow kind of interesting stuff. My dad was kind of into that kind of thing, UFOs, a bunch of other crazy stuff. And whatever your dad watches, you watch on TV. Yeah, that's the way it goes. So I got a chance to watch some of that.
His TV, his rules.
That's right. You only watch what you want to watch when your mom's not watching or before your dad gets home.
Right.
Yeah, so I think A Legend of Bogey Creek was one of the first movies related. It's kind of like to Bigfoot stuff. And we went to a drive-in movie theater to watch it. And some people don't know what a drive-in movie theater is.
Right.
Do
This
I need to
generation, at
explain
least.
that, or we're good to go?
I think we're good.
Okay.
But this, I mean, it's a place where you used to, instead of going to a movie theater, you used to drive your car to, you used to turn your radio and sneak people in the trunk, from what I heard.
That is right.
Yeah.
Also, instead of turning on your radio, we also had these little metal boxes on metal posts. Try not to hit them when you're driving in. But you would take that and hook it on your window, and that was your sound. You get to turn it up and down. Yeah, before the radio stuff. Yeah,
We've
I
come a
know.
long way.
We have. And anyhow, so I remember watching Legend of Bogey Creek, and it was the scene right when the guy is in the bathroom, and
Okay.
he's sitting on the John, and a hand swoops in through the window and swings at him. He screams and runs down with his pants down to his knees. Well, after that scene, I had to go to the bathroom, and I had to go all the way from the car through the darkness all the way to where the projection booth was. And I remember that. That was very traumatic for me growing up, because I didn't want to, Bigfoot was out there,
You were thinking Bigfoot might have snatched you?
I was thinking, I'm going to the bathroom. You seem to focus on that location, so I don't want to take any chances. But that's the fond memories I remember of the Legend of Bogey Creek. And I thought it was so scary but I remember I liked it. So I was shopping at Kmart. Some people I don't remember what that store is, but they used
I
to
think they're
sell
all out of business.
Oh yeah, they used to sell those 8-tracks, not 8-tracks, but what's the ones, the seat
carts.
The tape things, the movies that come on those little rectangular boxes.
Oh, and you
put
got, yeah.
Yeah, those things. Well, I got that, and I saw it over at the place.
You watched it again?
I did. I got it for my kids because I thought it was the funniest thing ever. After a while, it's scary at first, and then you think it's pretty funny. Well, like my father introduced me to the cryptic world, I was introducing my kids. So I slapped it in the player, and they kind of freaked them out. And I got in trouble with my wife because I'm supposed to scare the kids, but well, I'm just passing the torch, But that's kind of how I got started with that. And it wasn't until college, when I should have been studying to pass my grades, I was looking up Bigfoot stuff. And I was a recreation major. I made it. I was good. I had a minor, so I learned about the resources too. But I was studying on my free time all the Bigfoot stuff, and I put them on index cards because I thought someday I might need this. So I had a stack of index cards. Fast forward to my career as a park ranger, one of the jobs we did was interpretation. So for the campfire programs, we'd put together this interpretive program, which is like a slide presentation or fireside talk. Well, I did one on Bigfoot, and I was a lot of fun. As a public person, you can't give your opinions, but you can tell a story. And I was telling a story about the Bigfoot phenomena.
Based on history.
Based on history. So I like to use historical facts, tabloid magazines, because I opened up with holding all the tabloid magazines, reviewing all the subject matters, get a few laughs, and then get to business talking about how the phenomena started. Well, it wasn't until I was a ranger now, working out in the field, I was given interpretive programs, and I got hooked up. The first group I got involved with was the BFRO, Bigfoot Field Research Organization. And I was working that day, and I'd probably been about a year or so giving campfire programs on Bigfoot. And so I was asked to go contact somebody. So this guy shows up. His name is John Freyedis, and he's with the BFRO Research at the time. Well, they were at the park, Humboldt Redwood Park, and they were investigating a sighting that a father had while he was out hiking the trail in August. So now we're talking about Labor Day weekend.
Is this Northern California?
This is Northern California, Humboldt County. Yeah, the ocean's to your left. And it's like, he showed up and he says, hey, we want to go broadcast some sounds, what's called call blasting. Well, we're busy 3 times a year, are the busiest times. It's Memorial Day weekend, 4th of July, and Labor Day weekend. And this was Labor Day weekend. And so I can't do it. So I talked him out of it, but he said he was with this BFR group, and he told me that they were investigating a sighting. So I had to wait a whole month, and then in that month time, I got a chance to see the article that they put up with the BFRO on the webpage. And they were describing the location and kind of what happened, and they had some of the information wrong, because I'd gone up there and took a look at it, took some photographs. So I got on and wrote up a thing for the BFRO to let them know. you guys have misinterpreted this and that. And I guess they liked it. So now I had Matt Moneymaker give me a call and says, hey, how would you like to be a curator for the BFRO? And that's a long word I'm not used to using. So what's a curator? It's, well, people come to you and report sightings, and you guide people on investigations. So I go, I can do that. So I became a BFRO curator. So I did that for a few years, taking reports, advising people on different things. And then I kind of got tired of that. And then I got involved with the expeditions. That was a lot of fun. 2004, the BFR started doing public expeditions where people would pay money. They would go with a guide, and they go to locations, and you would show them a good time. Cue the Bigfoot, make sure they get their money's worth. And
Shake a few trees.
Yeah, make some grounding noises, whatever. And so it was fun. I got to organize it, and I got to meet some neat people in the program. And then I just keep doing that. And then about 2009, we used to do is we'd take the video equipment, but we would carry it and try to record an encounter. But what I thought was really cool is that what if we recorded the people that are trying to have the encounter? So we're out there filming the people.
Their reaction to what they were seeing?
Yeah, the reactions, or just the locations, or maybe how even research is done. So we thought that was pretty cool to do that. So I started doing that. I did that for a few years. I'll say a couple. And my problem is well, you gave me a camera. That's a mistake right there. So now I have a new toy. I have a camera with a night vision attachment, Gen 3, and I was filming everything, and it was pretty cool. So I got involved with that, and then I put up a bunch of videos for the BFRO. And then after that, I decided to get involved with the Bluff Creek project. And I made some contacts along the way, like through Stephen. I contacted him, or he contacted me at the 40th anniversary. And then...
Would have been in 2007.
2007. And that's the first time I kind of got to meet some of the players, but I knew Bobo prior to that. I met Cliff in 2005, so they were friends. And so we went on, so after the thing, we went over to Louse Camp, and I talked to Stephen. He told me about this great project he wants to do, finding a film site. Excuse me. So I want to find the film site. So I go, okay, well, that sounds great, but I don't know if I have time to do that because I had a real job,
Right.
And so I go, okay. And that kind of, from 2007, I also got a chance to have Bobo and Cliff take me to some big trees at the back of this hillside. And they were thinking, we think these are it. But you couldn't see anything else because it was overgrown. It's just these trees at the back of the thing.
Right.
So I just put it in back of my memory, says that's fine. So fast forward, and to 2008, and then 2009, and in 2010, it was time for me to go film Ian Cartson and Steven Struford. I was their paparazzi. I was there to document.
And they're the ones who came up with the idea to go and try to rediscover the site that had been grown over?
Yes. It was their thing. I'm not a zealot, at least I used to say that. I liked recording, I liked learning, I liked the phenomenon, but going back to the film site was not a big deal for me. But the fact that I was learning about it was good. So when I sat down with Stephen in 2010, and we went over his blog, which covered everything.
Hold that thought, Robert. We do have to take a break since
Yeah.
we're on the radio, but we'll be back from the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest.
Into the paranormal.
Jeremy Scott with Robert Leiterman here from the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest in Baker City, Oregon. He's telling us how he became to be involved with the Bluff Creek project, which he's published a book about. So please continue that.
All right, now I just remember where I left off at.
You were telling us about the gentleman who introduced you to the project and then how it evolved from there.
Okay, great. That was Stephen Strayford. So I went to Bigfoot Books. Those of you who know Stephen Strayford, the Bigfoot Books in Willow Creek, it's the first time I was there. I have to tell the story because it says a lot. So I drive up, the doors are open, the music's blasting. I get out, I have my camera running because it's my job, right? I'm documenting this interview process. So I walk up to the door and I'm narrating inside the camera. I'm walking in. I get inside, and lo and behold, there are acres, I can say acres, but just towers of books everywhere because he has so much books in there. And the music's blasting. I'm looking for him. I can't find him. And finally, I see a head pop up behind the screen at the far end of the thing. He looks at me. It's like, and I get that look like, what are you doing here? It's like, oh, yeah, I remember we talked about this. So that was the first time we actually started working together. And so I sat down. I went over the blog. He had it itemized like an outline. It was great. And I had a preconceived idea of what to expect, but I never expected that much information concerning the film site and the intricacies and the controversies.
So he had done a lot of the legwork.
He'd done so much of the legwork. My job, as I mentioned, was just to record him telling the story. And in the process of learning all this information, then I decided that after I took the red pill, I decided I was team member number 3. And so I went from just a videographer to a player of the team, learning about it. So it took a few trips when I went from the videographer to a zealot, a film site zealot, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, and I never thought I'd make that transition so quickly, but I did. And so there's 3 of us going all over the place, but trying to figure out. But the deal was there was 5 main locations of where the film site was. Downstream, we called it the Inca Davis site because that's an area he heard from somebody else who said it was pretty good in 2003, so that ended up being the place there. You move upstream to where everybody parked in 2003. That's the Peter Byrne location, where people tell us, yeah, Peter Byrne took us to the film site. He would take us there to that one tree in the parking area. Mm-hmm. By the way, you can't get there now because there's a berm, but that's the old parking area. And then you move upstream, you go to a nice open clearing area, and we called that the Christopher Murphy site because Christopher Murphy had pinpointed that location in his books, but he got his information from other people who weren't so sure where it was, but that's that.
This was a guesstimate at best.
Yes, and then you move upstream, and then we have the Perez site, after Daniel Perez. He's been really helpful with the project, loaning us pictures and talking back and forth, but at first, he wasn't so sure we would ever find it, but we had his site because we have video proof that he's sitting there pointing, talking to the news media and saying, this is the site. So we know that's the Perez site, but it wasn't quite where the other site was. And the last one was the one where I didn't know that's where Cliff showed me the trees on the backside with Bobo, but it's an area where also Bobo had talked to Bob Gimlin, and he said it looked familiar, but that's the one site. So Stephen asked everybody who had a claim for a site to send us a photograph or a map and mark it as to where it was. The only one who did that was Cliff. And that location he marks ends up being, after our research, the location. And once we narrowed it down, by the way, also Finding Bigfoot in August of 2011 had also filmed Bobo walking on the edge of that. No filming inside, it was too dark, it was overgrown. Nobody had done any clearing. We didn't start doing that till we showed up to prove the point.
It just goes to show these are remote areas where people see Bigfoot. These are places off the beaten path. They're not right out in the middle where everybody can see them. They might be in the middle of nowhere, but certainly not where we can see them. More with Robert Leiterman coming up from the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Festival. Into the Parabnormal, I'm Jeremy Scott. It's all about timing.
All right.
So we're technically off the air, but everybody here can hear us. So we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Are you? You've got more books at your booth?
Yeah, we do. I brought a whole box full of them. I got a whole box full of them. Yeah, we're spending a lot of time answering questions. It's like we don't have a big flag up. We're next to everything else over there. And when somebody kind of gives me a second look, I say hi, call them over, and answer questions. And we have some laminated pictures that we have, and I tell the story, kind of not quite how we're discussing it today, but kind of the story of how
the Reader's Digest version.
Yeah, the Reader's Digest version of getting in, figuring out how the site was determined, what the maps we drew meant, what the details were, how we figured it out, and some of the response from the Bigfoot community on our locations. Because it's not 100%. Not everybody sees the map. Not everybody believes that's the site. There's still some holdouts who think it's farther downstream, despite the facts that were presented.
Yeah. It's almost like a needle in a haystack. And so it's amazing to see this right here, because this is even more so needle in the haystack. I mean, this is...
That's a bit of history right there. Yeah, it's kind of mystery of the soils there. We're pretty much kind of serpentine, some serpentine soils, sedimentary, and it's a coastal range. And slate, I believe slate is there's a blue slate and some schist in there, and that's the stuff that gets eroded. And some of the water's always clear and always beautiful when it's not raining, and you get some nice reflections back. But that's so powdery and so thin that you can see some of the detail in that when you rub your fingertips across it. Hey, you got a spider taking advantage of my straw. Good thing I drank all my drink there. I'll have to fight him for some sips. Oh, he's going in.
The Sasquatch, also known as Bigfoot, is a legendary ape-like creature thought to inhabit the forests of North America.
I don't think it is a human. I think it's a Sasquatch.
The culture of Sasquatch has been ingrained here for a very long time. There's been activity here for a very long time.
The Pacific Northwest is prime and popular habitat for the legendary creature.
It's been coming here for years.
I reach back to grab my gun. I'm looking at this thing, and it's human looking.
Whatever you do, do not enter alone into the Parabnormal.
Former park ranger, author of the Bluff Creek Project, Robert Leiterman here from the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest. You were getting ready to tell us about a presentation you did for the Park Service, I believe it was, involving Bigfoot.
Yeah. Well, I have given several interpretive programmings for that over the period of time, and that was okay. That was okay as long as you kind of don't say just say, hey, I work for the department and this is what I believe. And so it's all about what It's just an interpretive opportunity to educate the public, entertain them, give them something to do on a Saturday night. Yeah. Hey, let me tell you about how we found the exact film site.
Sure.
Yeah. So we narrowed it down. I mentioned already before that Finding Bigfoot had did one of their earlier episodes there, and that was in August. So a couple months later, in September, we pretty much started our process one more time again. So the next process we need to do is called a grid search. So what we had to do is we have our location, but we need to know what's there. But you can't see through the forest because of the trees, so you can't see anything. And DeHenda did it in 1971, took an overview shot, and it covered the whole gravel bar, and you could see the artifacts, which are logs and stumps and debris piles that match from the shot. But we can't duplicate that shot because it's overgrown, so we had to take that same location, if it was the location, and draw squares, and then put the details in those squares in the squares. But in order to do that, to be accurate, is you need to run compass bearings. So we started on one side of the creek, and we crossed it in a northern direction, corrected declination, all the way to the far side. And then we did back bearings to make sure we're in a straight line. And at the end, there's this maple tree at the end. And that's a good sign because there's supposed to be a big maple. And then we figured half the distance. We cut it in half, and then we did east-west line. Now you have a big X, right? And now we needed to draw every 30 foot. We needed to put a line running east-west, and every 30 foot, a line running north-south. And that was our grid. And so we walked through the grid, drawing in everything of interest in those squares. And we marked them with flags, just metal little tip with the orange flags and pink flags. We put them in every corner of our square so we can identify it. And we went up and down in a pattern so we didn't get confused, which we did anyway. But that's and we broke it into quadrants so we could keep it easier to manage. So it took us a few days to do that. We finally got it all done. I had all my data. Now we're talking October. So it's October 30th, October 31st. The Forest Service is going to close the area down because of Port Orford's. There's a root rot that kills the Port Orford trees, and it's water. It uses water to transport itself. So we got to get it done before they close it up. So I got all of it done. I had to stay extra. And then I got it home, and then comes the beauty of it. As I sat down and I drew those artifacts into the squares on a map that was based on measurements and actual size and shape. And when I had that completed, remember that DeHinden overview I talked about in 71?
Right.
I put those side to side and I oriented them north-south. And then every time I saw an artifact that was similar in both things, I would circle it and give it a letter. So after I ran out of the English alphabet, I started using lowercase numbers. Then I started using numbers. And it was a dead match. There was a few stumps that were turned, logs that were turned differently, but everything was pretty much where it was supposed to be, except the old snags that were there originally. Okay, now the background trees, we had those written out too, but you have to tie the background trees into the artifacts on the sandbar. And that's the ticket. If you're basing your orientation off a 352 frame, a big tree in the background, and maybe a couple stumps in the foreground, you need to make sure that they match also this extra piece of information, which was the DeHinden 71. So once we did that, there was no question that we hit the spot. I even asked total strangers, I says, do these look like the same locations? And they go, yeah. Except, one person says, why are you drawing a map of this place? I go, no, the map is what we drew. This is an actual place. And it matched. And right before we did that, I mentioned we had 4 members. Well, Ian had a family emergency and had to go back east. And he missed out on the last survey. But up to that point, he did not think that was the location. He thought it was farther downstream. And he had his justifications for it. It's like we had our justifications for wanting to think it's upstream. He had his for downstream. So we're running at a 75% success rate when you should be on a project that should be 100%. So that didn't look good for PR when you're doing that. But after we explained to Ian and he looked at it, he was willing to say, you guys, we got it right. But he was also a team player. He was also part of the whole program. So it was kind of nice. In 2012, we brought Bill Munns down and we showed him the site location. And I remember that day. We took him down the trail. We're talking about a mile behind the berm. We walked him down the trail. We walked him over, got him across the creek without getting too wet. We put him on the upper sandbar, and then we pointed to the back and says, go find your big tree. So
I had found footprints up at, prior to 2018, and then when I actually saw an adult and a juvenile looking at me through the trees, that's when it kind of solidified for me. And I got my typical blurry Bigfoot photo, but I also got the footprint casts of the tracks where they were standing when I saw them. So not only did I see them, I got the evidence that they were there.
And Hannah, you were telling us that you've had every kind of imaginable experience with these besides a physical face-on.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. And so what kinds of things have happened? I know things have been thrown at you. You found weird things on trails and whatnot.
I think my first encounter was when we were hiking in the Bitterroot Mountains. This is in 2019. We were hiking in the Bitterroot Mountains of Montana, and we went in, did our 4-hour hike, which our dog did not appreciate, but and then following that same trail out, when we got to where we had gone into the mountains, there was a ripped off deer leg, an entire leg.
What does that?
The deer leg, the leg of a deer, like ripped off with bone and sinew and ligament and blood vessels, laid in the trail, laid in our walking trail.
Almost like they wanted you to find it.
Yes, and the dog wouldn't go near it. So something that should have attracted a dog, she took one sniff and just backed away, which was a little odd to us. So some smell was on that she was not willing to entertain, and that was the first this is weird. And we had heard ourselves being paced along the trail further up in the mountains.
Almost like something knew you were there, and they wanted you to know that they knew you were there.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, more to come. Scot and Hannah Violette from Squatch America and the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest after the break.
There's another hour of Into the Parabnormal coming up. Hold on to your seats.
There's a parallel universe there that separates us from all we perceive. True reality. Open the gate, let the truth be known. It's more than meets the eye without alone. Into the paranormal. Into the paranormal. Into the paranormal. Crossover.
The truth is far stranger than we'd like to believe. You're headed somewhere between the paranormal and abnormal. Into the paranormal.
There's something roaming out there. I said earlier, we can argue what this is or what this is not. The fact is, there's something out there that wants to conceal itself from us. It does not want to be seen. It does not want us to know it's there. And it will go to many measures, many lengths to try to keep us from collecting evidence, like photographic evidence, video evidence, or even a body. That speaks to the intelligence of these creatures. Go ahead, Hannah.
I say you're describing the deep state, man.
Right. But the intelligence of these creatures, that's something that many people don't understand.
Right. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, they're not like your normal, what you think of as an ape, like a chimpanzee or a gorilla. They're way smarter than that. We have been working actually with a group doing kind of the Diane Fossey Live with the Bigfoot kind of thing for 4 years down in Crater Lake, and we've been doing actually cognitive tests with them.
And what we have discovered over the last few years is that they seem to possess an incredible degree of executive functioning, ability to strategize, forward plan, pattern recognition, all those things that we equate with human frontal lobe intelligence.
Right. Scott, you told me some pretty wild things the last time you were on this show, and I feel like we didn't really have time to go into them. But before we get to that, when you were on the program last, one of my listeners asked, why haven't we found a body? And you basically gave just a stellar explanation of that, compared to bears or other animals in the woods. How often do we find their bodies?
We don't. What's interesting is Dr. Grover Krantz from Washington State University put up $25,000 over 30 years ago for someone to bring them a body of a bear that died naturally in the woods, and he never had to pay that. It's just a matter of numbers. If you look, we find deer carcasses, elk carcasses. So I actually asked the wildlife biologist here in this area where we're at right now, in the Wallowa-Whitman National Forest, how many animals were in the woods. And he said, well, we got 10,000 deer. So I see deer all the time. We got 8,000 elk. I see elk all the time. He said, we have 400 to 600 bears. I see a bear in the woods every other year, maybe, in the woods. And he said, we have 200 to 300 cougars. I've never seen a cougar in the woods. Not that a cougar probably has seen me in the woods, but I have never seen a cougar in the woods. And he said, we've got probably 20 or so wolverines. I don't know anybody who's seen a wolverine in the woods, So if there's 20 of these Bigfoot in the Wallowa-Whitman National Forest, the odds of being in the same place at the same time and finding a dead body within 9 days because predators, decomposition, the word I can't say.
Decomposition.
Yeah, that's the one that just went out of my head. But anyway, and a lot of people don't realize that pound for pound, the most prevalent animal by body mass weight in the forest eats bones, and that's a field mouse. So we've done experiments where we strap deer down in the woods, and it takes 9 days until there's nothing there. Maybe a little fur left on the ground that blows away. So the chance of finding one of the 20 Bigfoot that have died, and if they have a lifespan of 120, 130 years, much like humans naturally should have, the 120 to 130 years.
Where does that number come from, the 20 Bigfoot who have died?
Oh, a few years ago, Dr. Meldrum from Idaho State University took a study of all the Bigfoot reports from all the different agencies that take Bigfoot reports. And his students did a study to figure out, well, by this amount of reports over this time, they kind of guessed how many Bigfoot were in an area. And they came up with this this theory that there's 3 Bigfoot in any 20 square miles in any national forest. So that's where we're coming up with
20 for this area.
20 for this area.
Okay. So if you found a body, what would you do?
Strap it to the truck and drive to Idaho State University.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think that would be convincing enough for mainstream?
I think
academia.
I think it would. It's kind of weird that Dr. Grover Krantz from Washington State, before he passed away, said if we ever found a body, we would still have to take it from university and rub anthropologists' face in it before they would believe it. You know, we can't just say, hey, we found it.
And dodge the black helicopters following us.
Right. So do these things have a lifespan? I mean, if they die, they must.
Yeah, they must. Yeah, we're kind of guessing it's probably close to humans, what humans naturally should have.
Minus all the pollutants we put into
Yeah,
ourselves.
we put a lot of weird stuff in our bodies, you know. But, you know, they eat really naturally, and they're about the same size of us. They walk upright. They have, 10 toes, 10 fingers, no canine teeth. They're hominids like us. So we're guessing they should be about 120, maybe 130 years lifespan. So if there's that few of them, and they only die every 130 years, since they're apex predators, they probably got nothing that actually hunts them unless they get sick from disease. There's probably not that many bodies actually fall on the ground,
And one thing we don't talk a lot about is the cover-ups, and there are cover-ups, right, of Bigfoot evidence. There are fires that are set. There have even been reports of government agents coming in to physically remove Bigfoot from areas.
Yeah, there's the stories of Mount St. Helens. I believe there was 8 bodies taken off the mountain. But we personally have had a bunch of reports in a certain area, and this has happened to us 3 times, not just once, but 3 times. We've got a lot of reports in a certain area, and by the time we get there to do the investigation, the Forest Service does a controlled burn in the area.
Has our military actually gone in to kill one of these things?
Well, there was a story in California in Mono Lake that they did. There was a sighting. Actually, a guy got a picture of one by Mono Lake in California, and there was the black helicopters and Special Forces gentlemen jumping out of it and going into the forest after that sighting. So, there's a lot of legends and stories about that.
Would you both agree that it's not a good idea to hunt Bigfoot?
Absolutely.
Yes. Oh, I just said yes.
Oh, okay. I wondered if you had some. Yeah, it wouldn't be a good thing. There's so few of them. We don't know if they're actually human or not. But me working with Native American tribes, every tribe in the nation calls these things another people, not an animal. They think they're another people, not like us, and
another tribe.
And they're very adamant about not killing one. And so I think if somebody actually did, they'd be in a lot of trouble with the 600 tribes across the nation.
Well, especially if they did it in Washington, where they actually have a law against killing Bigfoot. But how many other places do? Do we know?
I know there's one. Minnesota passed a law too, and I think Kentucky. has one too. You know, and sometimes I think they're passing these in jest, but there are laws in the books now, you know, so I think that's catching on.
Would you eat Bigfoot if...
No.
No? I mean, if like...
I do have a collection of Bigfoot recipes, but you can easily swap that meat out for beef, pork, lamb, chicken.
Are those recipes to entice the Bigfoot?
I think those recipes were to entice buyers at bookstores.
Okay, fair enough. Scott, you talked a little bit earlier about these beings having the ability to, not only are they learning from us and are we learning from them, but they can actually teach us stuff.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a whole lot of stories from Native American culture that they're the masters of medicine. And in fact, some tribes have put sick children into the woods and they've disappeared for a week and then come back and Bigfoot has healed them. There's all sorts of those legends like that. But we can learn a lot from just natural life from them and living in the woods. You know, they don't need fire. They don't need tools. You know, they've got this down.
They are perfectly adapted to their environment.
So you guys already have your next expedition and the expedition after that and the expedition after that planned out, because that's just kind of what you do. Let's go back to 2021, though. Wendigo Pass. I understand that was pretty significant for your research. Tell us where that is and then what you found there.
Okay, Wendigo Pass is an area north of Diamond Lake in the Cascades in southern Oregon, near Crater Lake area. And there was a significant find we found in 2021 is we found a bed that had been created next to a pond. And we found 3 different sizes of footprints running around the pond. In fact, we found almost 70 footprints altogether from the 3 different sets. And so we found mom and 2 siblings. One just learning to walk and the older sibling. And the interesting thing about the footprints we found the infant was toddling like human toddlers toddle, you know, and it was taking step like
based on the footprint pattern.
Based on the footprint pattern, they were taking a few steps, catching their balance, take a few steps, just like toddlers do. And then we found the older siblings' footprints walking sideways next to the younger sibling, and I think they was holding on to the younger sibling's arms, teaching him to walk.
So like various lengths of footprints.
Yeah.
Various widths as well.
Yeah, we found 2-inch or 4-inch footprints, 6-inch footprints, and 11-inch footprints.
That's just amazing. But those are not uncommon trackways?
No. In fact, I think the folks from the Olympic Project up in northern Washington have quite a few sets of like little 2-inch footprints that they found.
Wow. So where are you going next? It's top secret. Can you tell us? Or will we find out in like a month from now when you put it on YouTube?
Yeah, when we go on YouTube, when we're saying, hey, we're coming to you live from right here, we were there a month ago, so we're not exactly where, you know, because we try to keep that secret, not because we're trying to be, you know, top secret or whatever, but we do that because we want...
Well, sometimes you go into the areas where maybe restricted or you have to have special permission there and you don't want gawkers.
There's that. And then we also don't want hoaxers. We don't want people knowing where we're going to be and when we're going to be there, because then that gives the potential of somebody saying, oh, okay, now's my chance to go hoax these people.
And there's also the phenomenon of the observer effect, where, you know, anything that we observe, we change, and the more observers there are, the more change there is.
Right.
So we want to keep things as discreet as possible and be as non-intrusive as possible.
More of a controlled environment, so to speak. Scot Hannah Violette from Squatch America, appreciate you so much. Thanks for coming on. It's always good to be out here. I appreciate you guys for inviting me again. This is our 3rd year out here, 3rd annual Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest. Get ready, everyone. Hope you have Bigfoot stories and questions and experiences you want to share, because the Bigfoot Town Hall is up next here from the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Festival in Baker City, Oregon. I'm Jeremy Scott, somewhere between the paranormal and abnormal.
Into the paranormal.
I'm hearing something over there, dude.
That is not a human.
Still there.
2.5 inches long. Something with a big straw that just simply went like this.
That thing is the same color as the undergrowth. If it laid down, you probably would not be able to see it.
It's possible that there are different types depending on their environment they're in.
Oh man, look at, there he is. Look at that thing. You see it? He's staring right at me.
The Sasquatch, who are naked and walk around barefoot and are connected to the natural world so deeply, are immensely, incredibly telepathic.
Pretty sure there's a Sasquatch down there.
All right, everyone, welcome to the Bigfoot Town Hall here at the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Festival. I'm Jeremy Scott, and let's go down the panel here from, left to right, and everybody introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Scot Violette from Squatch America.
Robert Leiterman from the Bluff Creek Project.
Tom Sewid, Sasquatch Island, Northern Vancouver Island, British Columbia.
Tom Bennett, Southern Utah Bigfoot Association.
Fantastic. So this right here is all about you, because we want to hear what you have to say if you have a Bigfoot encounter, whether you saw this thing face on or not, whether you had a vocal encounter, whether you heard something, saw something, smelt something, found something, whatever the case happens to be. These are the guys who are going to hopefully be able to answer that question for you, or at least give you some insight on what it is that you experienced. So if you have questions or comments, just come up here, and we'll come up to you with a mic, and everybody can hear you at home. So we just talked to Scott. So let's move way down to the far right, and let's talk to Tom Bennett. You are with the Southern Utah, Bigfoot
Association.
Bigfoot Association. I wanted to throw research in there. But are there a history of Bigfoot or Sasquatch encounters in your region?
There are, but they're not incredibly common. There are a lot of Bigfoot experiences that happen in the northern part of the state, but in southern Utah, there are some encounters that take place. We did an interview as recently as last week with someone who had an experience.
Are there typical encounters that you hear about in the area or in particular regions?
Yes, there's begun to be. So it's the desert region out there. You know, this is about 2 hours east of Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, when you think of that region, it is mostly desert, but there is some forest in the higher altitudes as well. And it seems to be that wherever those valleys come down into the farming communities, that's where the majority of these sightings are taking place. Most of them currently are happening just north of St. George, Utah, in a small farming community called New Harmony.
Okay, so just describe the terrain for us in that area.
So up there, it is alpine forest that gives way to high desert and kind of meadowland.
Fantastic. All right, Tom, you come from the Vancouver, the other Tom Sewid from Sasquatch Island. You come to us from Vancouver Island, or from up in Canada, but also you have had some experience in Washington as well.
Yeah, I'm from Vancouver Island, north British Columbia coast, commercial fisherman all my life. Worked out in the bush, hunting guide. So we used to see them and hear them. It's all mostly second growth, what we call regen forest, after it's been logged, so it's pretty thick. So most encounters take place where they're seen on riverbanks, crossing roads, or out on the beaches at low tide harvesting seafood. But I'm living in the Olympic Peninsula in Forks, Washington right now. I'm managing SasquatchLegend.com. And I've been out investigating. First investigation was when a young fella came into the store and told me that a few nights before something hit his trailer, started banging it and shaking it. He opened the back door and saw this big Sasquatch walking across his backyard, grimaced at him, and went into the bush. And that's not 3/4 of a mile from the store, downtown Forks. So the next day I went up the logging road as far as I could, and I hiked into a knoll area, and I spooked two that were sleeping up on top of that knoll during the daytime. I didn't see them, I just heard them tree shake and then tree break, and then I ran at them at the top of the hill and through the thick forest, and I could just hear them beat feet and take off down the backside of that hill.
And so there's a history of encounters within your tribe, but in both places that you just mentioned.
Oh yeah, the Pacific Northwest, it's on like Donkey Kong out there. The only trouble is it's so thick with the rainforest, whether it be ancient old growth, which is far and few between now, and pretty isolated on top of mountains. And then you got the mountainsides and valleys that are all second growth, pretty thick. So, you know, chances of seeing one that thick are pretty much slim to none. So you do have to go in the open areas.
You're a big fan of BFRO, right?
Bank Forest Research Organization.
Their stats say Washington has the most Bigfoot sightings in the continental United States. Do you agree with that?
No, British Columbia has more. It's just there's less people.
I said continental United States.
Well, I'm an Indian. There's no such thing as the border.
But British Columbia, I think, is towards the top of the food chain in Canada.
Yeah, it's very remote. Like it's, you know, especially being a commercial fisherman, and when you go up to some of these inlets, and when I was a water taxi tour boat operator, you know, in the wintertime, I'd be going up the head of inlets to deliver equipment and supplies for logging camps, and it's pretty lonely when you go up a 50-mile inlet and there's absolutely no other humans you see. And, you know, sometimes you're out there clam digging by yourself, and that's when you hear and smell them at night.
And there's Peggy. There's Peggy joining us from Sasquatch Island as well. I hope she's cooled off by now. That was it was a little bit warm earlier. So Peggy, have you cooled off a little bit? Yes. All right. Well, good. Yeah. Good. Way better. All right, Robert, we're going to go to you next. You come from the Bluff Creek area. We just spent about 30 minutes with you on the radio or so. What particular part of California do you come from?
Well, originally, or what I left 13 hours ago to get here?
Both.
Yeah, originally from Southern California. And then I went to school in Northern California and never really went back, so to speak. But I worked at parks, different places, and mostly in the northern part and central part. And now I'm Humboldt County, and that's been pretty active up there for living.
Which would be the more active?
Active in terms of?
Northern or southern?
In terms of reports? I don't know the exact answer to that. I do know that the more people you have, the more people out, the greater chance you have of reports being recorded.
Right.
And the less people you have, the less chance you have of having things reported. So, yeah.
All right, Scott, with Squatch America, I spent some time over at your booth actually talking with some of your fine fans who were stopping by to check out your collection of casts, and you have quite a bit of them on your table that were taken from right here in Eastern Oregon in the Blue Mountains, which, by the way, still have snow on them, and it's mid-June, late June.
Yeah, that's normal. Yeah. Here in the Baker Valley where we're at right now, we don't get a lot of snow, but it gets definitely cold in the wintertime. I think the record, we were 13 days straight, 16 below here for a while. But up in the mountains, there's places the snow never goes away. This is actually known as the Alps of Oregon. Really steep terrain. We have mountain goats. We have snow year-round in some places. So it's a smorgasbord up there for Bigfoot.
All right, let's start with you and go back down the other way. Do Sasquatch prefer cold or warm climates?
Yes.
Both.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah, I just have to say that, because there's a lot of reports, up here in the Pacific Northwest where it's cold, and especially British Columbia, it gets cold. But, there's a lot in Texas. We just spent last winter in New Mexico, where I heard hundreds of Bigfoot reports from people, and you wouldn't think that they would be Bigfoot in New Mexico. But we were in a place called Cloudcroft, New Mexico, elevation 9,000 feet. They have a ski area. It looks like Eastern Oregon here. So I think Bigfoot prefers wherever they're at.
All right. What about you, Robert? Warmer or colder climates?
I'd say I have to go with drinking water, food source, habitat, and if it's hot, then you're going to be working in the nighttime shift. And if you're in the desert, you need water. And I'd say the climate could affect it, but I think sources of food will be a better thing for it, because you can be in Northern California and it gets hot in the summertime, but there's still a good food source. Or you can go to Southern California where it's hot, like the desert, or down there where it's super hot, and it depends on food source and habitat. So that's kind of a hard question to answer based on temperature.
Tom Sewid, you lived out in the bush for over 20 years. I think you may be the most qualified to answer this question because you've lived through all the seasons out there.
Yeah, that's right. I say both because I'm a firm believer that they have, like us, the rest of us Indians, because they're just the other tribe, they have their tribal territories and they seasonally migrate throughout it from areas of seasonal high abundant food, and also what we're seeing in Vancouver Island region during the winter. They're like any other Indian. They don't like snow. They come down to sea level.
Tom, you must get reports from the area. Tom Bennett, that would be. We've got two Toms up here. You must get reports in Utah throughout all the seasons.
We do, but what I'm finding more of is a lot of the experiences we're getting in Utah and in Arizona are coming from the Dene people, the Navajo, and they tell us quite a bit about their encounters, and most of them take place in very harsh desert environments there, but there's more of that there. There's parts of the Navajo Nation that are forested, but the vast majority of it is a very harsh desert environment, and it doesn't seem to slow down the number of Bigfoot sightings at all. Now, that being said, most of the Dene settlements are small family clans that are out isolated, and many of these people are still living in extremely rural areas with no electricity and living a largely traditional lifestyle with sheep herding and activities like that. So they see them in these isolated environments.
All right. Folks, again, if you have a question, you can text that to 818-672-6865. If you're listening abroad, that's 818-672-6865. If you have a question, you can just come up and join us right by the stage here, and we'll run the microphone out to you. A question, a comment, but we really want to hear about Bigfoot stories because, Scott, you used to be Blue Mountain Bigfoot Research, and you've evolved from there into Squatch Oregon and now into Squatch America. And indicative by the cast that you have over at your table, there are a lot of reports right here from this area.
Oh yeah, we when I first started Blue Mountain Bigfoot Research, it was about 7 years ago, and it was something I kind of did honestly on a whim. I was wondering if anybody in the Baker Valley here or over in Union County and LeGrand had Bigfoot reports. So I started a Facebook page and asked people for Bigfoot reports, and our local newspaper, the Herald, did a story on me, and with that, when that newspaper dropped, we got about 1,000 stories in a week on my website from people who've had encounters, and not just recent ones. I mean, we do get recent ones, but people telling me, well, in 1971, we were up here, and so we've got tons of stories and reports from this area. It's famous for a couple different reasons. The Freeman film was in 1990, just up the road here, about 20 miles. So yeah, this area here we get tons of Bigfoot reports, and mainly because I didn't realize this, and so I started putting pins and maps from all the reports I got from up and down the Blue Mountains here, and then I realized something. The Blue Mountains go up into Idaho and Montana and connect with the Rockies, and then they go south into the Ochocos and connect to the Cascades. This is the only natural mountain range that connects the Rockies to the coast.
You mentioned the Freeman film, and of course the Patterson-Gimlin film is another. Those are some of the more popular, yet today when you look on the internet, you will see videos and videos and videos. These are current ones. You don't see the ones that have actually been investigated and studied actually popping up at the beginning of the search results. You have what the latest, greatest so-called Bigfoot researcher has posted. I mean, I've seen the Freeman film, and I've seen the redigitized Freeman film, which we actually saw last year at the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest. I've seen the Patterson-Gimlin film. That has recently been redigitized. Both of those look, I mean, from my honest perspective, like they're legitimate. However, there's tens of thousands of these on the internet that are not. I quite frankly think it's out of control. I watch some and they'll tell you, oh, best Bigfoot sighting ever. You watch it and you don't see anything. Some of these are just, I think, clickbait. Do you gentlemen agree? And then part two of that is, does this inconclusive or in some cases downright fake evidence cloud the image within the Bigfoot community? Why don't you go ahead first, Robert?
Well, first they have to circle it, or else we're not going to know what they're talking about.
Right. If there's no circle around it, it's not a Bigfoot.
Right. Well, once it's circled, we can focus on it. Yeah. Anybody can post anything, and that's the follow-up for that. Is you're looking at all sorts of stuff. Sorry. Yeah, I did this yesterday. I gave a talk, and I was talking like this all the time. And you need to tell me to put the mark in my mouth.
Like that.
And that would have worked better, but thanks for reminding me. Yeah, so I still go on the internet too, and I start looking at all these things going, I don't believe that, I don't believe that. That's interesting, don't believe that. But you're right, there is so much on there, and how to decipher it. And I think I read somewhere if there's a greater chance if it's sincere if it's ran through a research group versus just somebody posting something. And then people like to stage things, and you can see a lot of that too. And you can't believe everything you see, and that's a tough one, watching on there. And what was the second part of the question?
Does that cloud the image? Does that give people a bad name who are actually doing legitimate research in this field?
It does. It's hard to convince people that even exists. People watch these movies on it. Best horror movies are about creatures like Bigfoots. Now it's aliens, and so that's always there for you. But every time somebody sees something, they go, "Oh, that again, that again." It's kind of like back in the early 2000s because a gentleman passed away, and his family said that he created Bigfoot, and Bigfoot was dead. He made it all up. And so many people told us that it was dead, it didn't exist, it was all made up. And you ask them, oh, I heard it in the media, that's what happened. So going back to the videos again, it does cloud the image of researchers. There are a lot of good researchers out there that are working very hard to prove to themselves and other people, and every time they look at something that just pulls them back, it's like setting you back all the time. Hard to be taken serious if you're always being made fun of on the things like that.
Tom Bennett, you get some of those with Southern Utah Bigfoot Association?
We've had a lot more people contact us that are completely blown away by what they've experienced and wouldn't believe it had they not seen for themselves. We had a lady contact us recently. It was her first night living in this town I mentioned earlier, New Harmony. She had moved from California. And that very first night, maybe the activity had drawn the curiosity of the Sasquatch, and they had an encounter that very first night. And she was just as shocked as anybody, but had denied it so long for herself that she felt like she needed to tell her story. Now, it's true, we do live in an era where, in all arenas, truth is hard to dissect. And technology is such that people can create convincing fakes. However, there's also more people now analyzing footage with a very scrutinous view and having knowledge of that technology where they can see, this footage has been manipulated, or this footage never has been manipulated, and we can see that from the evidence. And honestly, I don't think most researchers really care if most people believe in Sasquatch or not, because the evidence supports the existence of the creature, and we want to solve the mystery.
Yeah, one of the things that even go back into the 90s with Paul Freeman, there was an episode with him where he was out casting prints with a news crew right there, and somebody asked him, have you ever faked a print? And his answer was, yeah, we have, because I take some of the casts and put them in my backyard and practice casting, because I push them into the ground, and then we practice, how thick or how thin to make the casting material to make the print look really good. That was his answer. But when it went on to the air, the question was, have you ever faked a print? Yeah, I have. That's where they cut it. You know, so that kind of sets us back a lot to.
There's a but there.
Yeah, there's a but there, and they cut that off. So
they did it because
if you want to put my tinfoil hat on.
Well, if you haven't tested faking it, it's hard to spot a fake.
Exactly, true. And another thing, you know, me being an anthropologist, there's something I learned back in the 1800s when anthropology was first coming out. There used to be a lot of anthropologists from different universities when they were traveling around to different tribes in different places like South America or into Africa. They would carry around these calipers and measure people's heads, you know, just to say, does this tribe's head bigger than somebody else's head? You know, just trying to figure out, you know, what different humans look like. Well, we can do the same thing today. If you put a person in a costume, you can't change where his body bends. You can't change where his hips bend, where his knees are, and where his hands land. So if a lot of times when we see these videos, you know, I caught the greatest Bigfoot in the world. Well, I can freeze frame the video, take my little digital measurer, and I can measure the length of the legs, the length of the arms, the length of the torso, and there's a percentage we come up with. There's a human percentage, and there's a Bigfoot percentage. And when you put somebody in a costume, they've still got that human percentage. A proportional DNA. Yep.
Tom Sewid, I'm guessing you just don't have any time for these people who want to fake this stuff.
Well, you know, those guys that are faking, you know, they're the ones that got their heads flushed in the urinal in high school and never had a prom date. You know, they're making, you know, homework for us where in my group, Sasquatch Island on Facebook, everyone knows that I run a pretty tight ship, and if you don't like it the way it is, then I flush you out of the group. It means I delete you and post a picture of you and a picture of a Sasquatch sitting on a toilet laughing. You've been flushed. So it keeps my group true, and it keeps the idiots and the keyboard warriors in Mama's basement quiet. But what I have found is a couple of years ago we had a picture of a probable Sasquatch on Vancouver Island filmed standing on a hill in an open forested area. And the team worked. All of a sudden someone produced a mask that you can buy online that was measured and overlaid and confirmed that that was a hoaxer. And then someone else stepped forward and said, well, that guy actually is a YouTube puts entertainment together, and Sasquatch is the main one. He lives on Vancouver Island, and you know, we basically put, you know, a nail in it that that's a fake. And does it cloud our efforts in what I call investigating? I don't believe there's no Sasquatch researcher, because as soon as what I teach people is investigate the investigator or the poster. And then right away when someone says, I'm a Sasquatch researcher or expert researcher, I always ask them, well, have you got a crispy clear picture on the cover of National Geographic and an editorial in there with your subjects like Diane Fossey and Jane Goodall? And they look at me and they go, no. I say, well, then you're an egomaniac, not a researcher. You're a stumbling, bumbling investigator just like me. And so in the clouding aspect, what we need to do is work together as a community and share information like I do, like buy a P1000 Nikon with a built-in telephoto lens that you can zoom in and see Sasquatches like Scott did with his telephoto lens on a mountain 2 miles away. And then share, you know, people that are doing the software analysis of different things like MK Davis and others, you know, them stepping in and analyzing everything. We're all working together as a community, as a team, and we're weeding out the hoaxes, but we're also giving clarity to the ones that are, that possibly is a Sasquatch.
But do you think with better cameras, we may soon find better videos and pictures out there?
Absolutely. With cell phones, you know, I'm teaching people, you know, grab your FLIR Scout 2 monoscope, night vision, or a knockoff night vision monoscope and put it on your cell phone and do like we did and record a Sasquatch in FLIR for 16 minutes, 40 seconds on a beach in British Columbia. And then I'm teaching people, get your P1000 Nikon or another telephoto lens and take pictures of the mountains like Scott did. And lo and behold, when you analyze it, you might see 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. So, got to work together. Some people are, telling me, don't buy FLIR no more. Buy this on Temu. It works just as good as FLIR from 5 and 10 years ago. So, like I say, communicate with one another. And every time one of those ones that want to muddy the water and cloud it up, the keyboard warriors in Mama's basement, we all got to go in attack mode and launch on them, put them in their place, and they disappear.
Scott, have you seen the evolution through the better technology with the videos and pictures? I mean, are they better than when you first started looking at them?
Yeah, quite a bit. But there's kind of a stumbling block today, too, with the technology. With these AI videos and stuff that come out, it's getting harder and harder to discern what's real and what's not. But then also, on the other hand, we've got guys with AI programs that can tell you if that video's AI or not. So, there's always the hoaxers that are going to be there, but we are getting better technology. I just got sponsored by a company that just started putting out thermal trail cameras. So that's going to change things. We're going to put those in the woods and see what we can come up with.
So, Robert, you've actually got videos, cameras that is, down at the Bluff Creek site. Are these top-of-the-line cameras?
Well, they were when they first got out, but we're kind of running that equipment until it dies down. We had Bushnells out there that had the option of doing stills or option of doing series of shots, but we like the video because the video tells you a lot more about a movement than a still shot. So we really like the videos.
Tom Bennett, you have any thoughts on this?
I don't have any current cameras in the woods, but there's a guy in southern Utah that I was talking to recently that wanted to employ a technique with some type of motion detectors and drones that could be sent out quickly to an area. So I think the technology will definitely increase the quality of material that's coming out. But at the same time, simple things like dermal ridges in a trackway and evidence like that that's very difficult to fake, while being not altogether inconclusive and disproving without a shadow of a doubt, which, people will never be happy till they have that body, those kind of things still provide for the rational person solid enough evidence to prove the existence. And so we know that it exists. It's just gathering that evidence. And as fun as it is to see the videos and pictures, those will never be sufficient for the scientific world to acknowledge the existence. They're just a part of the puzzle.
Right. And there still is a lot that is speculative when we talk about Bigfoot research, but there may not be as much speculation as you might consider when we talk to researchers, such as these gentlemen up here, who tell you, no, I actually found different lengths of footprints. I know that it was mother and father and maybe an offspring. We know that the Patty film depicted a female Sasquatch, at least through the breasts that were depicted in that film. So we know that there can be different races, male and female, just like humans, right? Whoever.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I want to put this out to the world right now. Yes, there's more than one of them.
You mean they're not time traveling through portals into other dimensions and time traveling from Oregon to Florida?
Yeah,
blink of an eye?
No. They are a people, as the indigenous tribes would say. They're just another species on this planet living their lives.
Anybody else have thoughts on that?
I just remember one time visiting Dr. Jeff Meldrum at his office at the University in Pocatello, and he said something that I actually got out a piece of paper and wrote it down. He said, if there is not currently a creature like this that exists, it would be the only time on the evolutionary tree that it did not. Because we think of the evolutionary tree as kind of like that picture, of just the the gradual evolution into man. But it really never was that way. It was always a variety of species, more like a bush, evolutionary bush, not so much a simple progression of species. There were probably numerous species of these things on the planet, and there may be even now. I mean, the photographs that people capture, there are a lot of different species, it seems, of this creature.
Tom Sewid, to take this back to what you were talking about earlier, you do believe that the Sasquatch are humans from another tribe, and so could there be humans from multiple other tribes out there?
Oh, there are reports in every state in the United States, Alaska included, every province and territory in Canada, except below the Nome line, we call it, in Canada. From 60 miles roughly south of Nome, Alaska, going on a latitude line right to the east coast of Canada. There seems to be no Sasquatches north of that line. But everyone talks about it. That's why I call Sasquatch Island is North America. You're standing on it. Because every Indian tribe and everyone in every state and province and territory have names and stories of their Sasquatches that they're sharing their homelands with, even now in these modern days of 2024.
Robert, how do you feel about there being different races of Sasquatch? Makes sense, if they are an offspring of human, or if they are another race of human, that there would be male and females just like us.
Well, if we are related, then yes, and then there's going to be different races. I mean, if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. We have all these continents, all these different people all associated with it. Yeah, and we don't all look the same. We're not all the same height. We're not all the same build. You don't have to measure our heads, but we're not all exactly we're all genetically a little bit different, and there's no reason why a population of Sasquatches wouldn't be any different than that.
And so to create these races, they obviously have to mate.
It helps.
Unless they're created like Adam and Eve, right? Tom Sewid?
So in numerous Indian tribes speak of mating between a female of their tribe or a male with a Sasquatch. You can go to British Columbia's capital, Victoria, and southern tip of Vancouver Island, and there's a Royal British Columbia Museum. And in front of it, they have a rebuilt traditional big house from my Kwakwakiwak tribe, painted with a sea monster on the front with what you would call a totem pole outside. And at the base is a female Chonach, a Sasquatch, holding a baby. I just found out recently from the chief of that family that that's one of their stories about how one of their males mated with a Chonach, and that baby she's holding is the born one. So right there is telling you if Sasquatch, Chonach, and human can mate and have baby offspring, but it's not just my tribe, it's other ones. And then we know the story in Russia with that family of descendants from, I guess, a Yeti or their equivalent of Sasquatch, and other stories throughout North America. So are they another form of human? I don't think so. I think they're just a bigger, hairier, nocturnal vision, and they retain their ability to expel from their armpit glands. They're just the other tribe.
That would explain the smell, right?
Yeah.
Well, I always explain the smell by teenage boys, but one of the things I learned in anthropology school was that family tree or the thing Tom was talking about, the little monkey that turned into the man, that T-shirt you see, or the symbol, that's not how it worked. At any given time, like what Jeff Meldrum said, at any given time in human history, there have been 3 to 4 types. I don't want to say species. I'm going to say types of human living together at the same time. So why is today any different? We all know that Homo heidelbergensis, Homo erectus, Homo nadali, Homo floresiensis, Homo sapien us, and Homo neanderthal all lived together at the same time. It wasn't one turning into the other. If you look at it this way, there's a group of people somewhere. Their population gets to the point where they can't sustain that population where they're living, and some needs to move away to another area so they can stay alive. The food runs out. Well, this other group moves away, and then another group moves away, and then they go from Africa to Europe. Well, after 1,000 years in Europe, you look different because you're eating different food, you're living in a different environment, walking on a different substrate. So you end up looking completely different. But you are still the same person, same type of person that came from Africa. But now you just look completely different. So it wasn't like one turning into the other. They were just adapting to their environment. So how many people out here, I'm going to ask, know that Homo neanderthal is still alive? Anyone?
Nobody.
Nobody. You ever seen a Neanderthal? They're from this place called the Acadian region of France. They're still alive because we bred them out. 5% of my DNA, because I'm Acadian, and probably Robert's too, because he's Acadian also, is Neanderthal. We bred them out. They're still alive. You're looking at one. And that's why, you know, Acadians or Cajuns, that's why we're a little off. We're okay? So, but, so why is today any different? Just like Dr. Jeff said, that's another type of person. They walk upright, they have 10 toes, 10 fingers, small canine teeth, they're human. They're another version of us that just hasn't went extinct yet.
Our final call for questions, comments, Bigfoot experiences. You can text 818-672-6865. That's 818-672-6865, or you could just walk up here and we'll hand you the mic. I've got a few more questions that I could throw out there. I think that Tom Sewid might have something to say about that, because you've described how, you know, looking at some of these pictures and videos, you can tell what is a Sasquatch and what isn't based on, you know, the color of its beard, the color of its hair, whether or not it looks oily or not. So what do you say when we hear about reports of, you know, people saying Bigfoot are different colors? They're blonde or they're white or any other shade we could imagine.
Well, we just know them as black bears. But when I was a hunting guide for bears, we hunted extensively in this one inlet called Lockburl Inlet, just off of northern Vancouver Island, because of the diverse black bear coloration in there. We had chocolates, we had cinnamons, we had blondes, we had black and chocolate, almost looking like a little grizz, and but we never had any white ones. And Sasquatch the same, but I've heard from the shaman and other elders of different tribes is when I asked the question about the white grays, they're saying those are the elderly ones. But in the Olympic Peninsula, some of the stuff coming out of there with white Sasquatch sightings and different descriptions, one being smaller and big one, and one looking like this. And I think it's kind of like British Columbia's King Island and Princess Royal, where the black bear population after the glaciers receded were sort of isolated on those two islands, and they started interbreeding, which produced a genetic anomaly of a white bear, not an albino, but a Kermode, the spirit bear. And with people building cities all along the Puget Sound area, it's isolated the Olympic Peninsula. So when you look on Google Earth, it's, you know, it looks pretty impossible for the population of Sasquatches on the Olympic Peninsula to make it to the base of Mount Rainier because of those cities. And I think that's why there might be some white and gray variation to the Sasquatch being sighted on the Olympic Peninsula. They're interbreeding, and I've seen the same thing in Omaha Indian Reserve. It wasn't coloration, it was the two Sasquatches in a fleur we watched in an open soybean field. But really caught me was they had that fetal alcohol syndrome extreme look to their face.
Can you show us what that would look like?
They had that hang lip, mouth partially opened, the swing in their arms, that glazed donut hit with a hammer upside the head type of look. And that alarmed me, because when you look at Omaha Indian Reserve on Google Earth, you'll see it's an enclave of trees, and all around it industrial cleared farmlands. So there's definitely interbreeding going on within there. And, you know, it's something that's troubling, and, you know, we have to think about that, because we know it's against the genetic code and God's code to breed within the same family or tight-knit community. You know, you have to get new blood.
Anybody else have anything to say about different colors or shades of Bigfoot?
Well, not so much that, but one of the sightings that we had in southern Utah was the unique feature of three-toed prints. And I think it was Missouri, a long time ago, that they found three-toed prints.
Falk, Arkansas.
Falk, Arkansas. So that's a common thing that will happen with inbreeding is difference to the extremities, fingers and toes change. Even with people, you could be born without a hand. If you're inbred. I live in Utah. We know something about inbreeding, but
I wasn't going to go there. I'm glad you did, though. Saves me a little bit of embarrassment. Robert, any thoughts on that?
No, he caught me at that last word there. I have to think about that.
All right, Scott. Colors. Oh, did you already talk about colors? Different colors, the different shades.
No, it's just
of
like
Bigfoot?
humans have different colored hair. They have different color hair, and they get old and turn white too.
All right. Hi, what's your name? Where are you from?
My name is Bill Hinman. I'm from North Bend, Washington.
All right. And have you ever seen Bigfoot?
I have not.
Do you have a question or comment for us?
I do. I have a theory about the cover-up that I think a lot of us realize there must be some kind of cover-up going on, not just with Sasquatch, but with UFOs, with missing 411. There's a lot of things out there that have a lot of there's a lot of evidence that these things exist, and yet the governments are trying to cover it up. And I've heard a lot of theories. I heard Tom talk about a theory earlier, and he basically said that he thinks that it's possible that the governments want to cover it up because they don't want to have to support another native species or people or whatever you want to put it. I've heard people say that some theories are that if they came out and admitted that there was a Sasquatch, that there would be an uprising and we need to give them this land back. There's other theories about if they came out and admitted that these things, and not just Sasquatch, but UFOs and missing 411 and all these things were going on, that it would disrupt the community so much. And so I thought a lot about that, and my theory is and I'm gonna get this into just a really short piece of this, but I believe I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ, and I also believe that other faiths, they have gods, in stories, and a lot of the stories are similar. I believe that before we came to Earth, we were spirits with our God, and we chose to come to Earth. That's my Christian belief. And we had a veil put over our eyes while we came here so that we could make choices. I think the things that are going on with UFOs, with missing 411, with Bigfoot, and with a lot of other things are things that they're covering up because we don't want to know the truth. When we decided to come here, to this earth and receive these bodies, that we decided, hey, we just want this veil put in front of our eyes. So if all of a sudden, let's say we found a Sasquatch, what questions do we start asking next? Where did he come from? How did he get here? And I'm not going to get into my theory about, where people go and where UFOs are, and where they're parking them, and what about the 411 people, where they at? But people have theories about that. But more, I just wanted to talk about the cover up. And I've never heard a theory about why the government is covering it up that has made sense. And that one makes sense to me, and I was wondering if anybody else, has any other theories.
Thank you so much, Bill. Go ahead, guys.
Just south of us, Salt Lake City. I hear there's a big tabernacle down there in the Mormon faith. And we know that Christianity is the oldest industry on Earth. And, you know, I spoke today about the third and fourth indigenous tribes of North America is what I think Sasquatch is. But what about if we looked at it, if all of a sudden the Sasquatch is hitting the nail on the head with a hammer, that evolution took place and not creation? Well, that's going to be billions of dollars. That's going to affect this entire planet, not just the USA and Canada. You know, you're going to have people that are flying around as preachers in Lear jets and buying their mansion every month. You're going to have them down at the welfare office. So that's the way I look at it, and that's possibly one of the major reasons for the cover-up. But I always remind people, about the fact that the Gatling gun was created for the killing of the Indians, removing them. And then if we look at modern days, and I seen a video a few years ago of a Sasquatch from a night vision military equipment at just over the treetops, chasing the Sasquatch, where you could see the muscle movement in the floor, you could see the hair waving, you could see the fear in his face as he looked at that helicopter and was dodging left, right 4 times. And the video goes to snow. Watching it 6 times, I gave the guy back his cell phone. He said it had been snuck out of the military. I said, that Sasquatch died when it went to snow. He goes, yeah. He goes, you're right, Tom, they're killing him. And that's why we're seeing an influx, just the theory, of the urbanized Sasquatches coming to the urban edge all along the Puget Sound, Vancouver Island, British Columbia areas, because I think they're living like us Indians used to be about 180 years ago out there in fear for our lives. Better to be in the confines of an Indian reserve instead of being Gatling gunned down. Better to be a Sasquatch living in the human urban edge, eating from our backyards and our stables and sheds, than it is to be way out there in those mountains and all of a sudden a Black Hawk coming, just like when I was in Boise 3 nights ago, or just before dark, all of a sudden this Black Hawk flew over the house heading towards the forest we just came from that day up at Idaho, or the city. And I looked at everyone and I said, oh, going to hunt Sasquatches tonight. And I think that's reality, and we're going to hear more stories about that. And,
Anybody else with thoughts about why the cover-up?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay, I think he covered it as well. Hi, welcome to the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest. Your name? Where are you from?
My name is Leland. I live here in town, but I'm originally from Missouri, southern Missouri, in the Ozarks. I'm a hillbilly from the Ozarks. And you were talking about different races and different types of Sasquatch, or the possibility of it. I grew up, like I said, with the stories of the Ozarks. And there's all kinds of stories of cryptids and stuff in the Ozarks, including, if I remember correctly, the name, because this is not my area of anything, but the skunk ape is what they called it, but it is a bit different than what you normally hear about up here. And it hides in the swamps and in the forest of that area of southern Arkansas and in the forest of the Ozarks and such. So it's definitely different than what you hear of here in the north.
Comments?
Well, they live in a different environment, so they have to be, shaped different. It's kind of interesting. I have interviewed 75 tribes and got their names for Bigfoot, and it seems like the southern Bigfoots, their names are monster, cannibal, stuff like that. And then up here you've got, wisdom, benevolent brother, things like that. So I think if you live down in the swamps, you got to be tough. So.
Anybody else have thoughts on that, or we'll go to our final question? All right. Hi, what's your name and where are you from?
My name is Shauna Clark. Oop, I'm going to step over. I'm actually from Prairie City, so Eastern Oregon. Can I? Okay. Mine is actually a combo story, and I want your perspective. So my brother and I, this is in the 80s, my brother didn't have his driver's license, but, we're Eastern Oregon folks, so you drive around in the woods to learn how to drive. And we were cruising the back roads up. Somebody else can give better description afterwards, but up towards Austin and the town of Austin. And we had the windows down. It was a beautiful day like this, and we heard the most god-awful scream. And my grandpa later, it sounded like it was a woman screaming my brother's name, basically screaming James, but like blood-curdling. We both kind of, like, your blood stopped. I turned and looked at my brother, and I'm like, did you hear that? He's like, no. Okay. About 2 minutes later, he asked me to get out of the car, and I'm like, you're going to have to kill me. There's no way to go get him a drink out of the creek. when we got back, we visited with my grandpa, and he said that it could be a cougar, could be. And that was basically the end of it. And my grandpa actually worked in Northern California and some of the logging camps and told us stories of the people that he had worked with that had told him stories about the hairy men. That most of them were native folks that worked there. So I wanted your perspective, because I always question it now, the older I get and the more I learn about Sasquatch, was like, could that have been a cougar? Or, and because it was earlier in the day, so I mean it was, like I said, beautiful middle of the day.
Take a crack at it. Yeah, there's a lot of animal sounds that sound pretty weird. I'll give you an example of it. I worked in many different parks, and we had one time we had a report of a lost child, and it kept crying, and so we went searching for a lost child, and all we found was this fox that kept running from us. We kept looking for it. And I'll add this to you too, because I've heard some pretty scary screams. I had to respond to a rape in progress call at one of the units south of that. It was a hot call. We're going code 3 to get down there, and it's happening right now. So we're running code 3 down there. I get there, people directing me where to go. I'm down the trails. I'm walking down the trail with my flashlight because this took place off the bluff down on the trail section. So I don't want to be noticed, so I'm going intermittent with my lights. And I get to this one tree area here, and all the hair on my neck stands up. I stop. The light comes out. I'm searching everywhere. I don't see anything. I keep going. I get a call. It says, hey, come back. We figured it out. So I'm walking back. Same thing. I get the same location. Hair stands up. I shine my light around. I look around. I don't see anything. And that location was just under this great big oak tree. I get back up to the top side again, and I hear about it. The call was a rape in progress call. There's a woman screaming at the top of her lungs, and this Jim is yelling, shut the Frank up. So that was 2 campers down. The guy had been drinking too much, and every time he hears the scream, he yells, shut the Frank up. So there's your rape in progress call. But what's the other part was? Well, it was a mountain lion in heat screaming at the top of his lungs. And when I went to check it out the next day, I'm walking down the trail looking for all sorts of sign. And I find right under that oak tree I had stopped at, there's a nice mountain lion print. It's right there that I missed the first time through. So every time the hair stood up, I walked under that tree. When I came back and stood up again, I walked under it again. And that footprint, I don't remember seeing it there before, but it jumped down and hit the contact. So yeah, so animals do have these scary sounds, and you add distance to it, and the acoustics, and yeah. It could have been, but also the side of the coin, it could have been creatures screaming to set out for some reason. But yeah, if you don't see it, you don't know it, or you don't see it. Yeah. Thank you.
Remember, friends, if there's not a circle around it, it's not a Bigfoot. That's all the time we have here at the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest for today, but we'll save all the rest for tomorrow. Hope you'll come back then. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Good night, and God bless.
A confirmed attack is taking place against the United States. Aliens from an unknown location have been reported in multiple states.
We are controlling transmission.
There is another world that awaits, far beyond what we can see and feel. A place that's anything but ordinary.
What you believe might not be. Step into the zone of the best unknown. UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, conspiracies and cover-ups. Into the Parabnormal we go with Jeremy Scott.
From the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest in Baker City, Oregon, good afternoon, friends. Jeremy Scott here, somewhere between the paranormal and the abnormal. We've learned so much, actually, here at the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest this weekend. Really just some interesting conversations that we've had, wonderful people that we've had a chance to connect with and learn new things with. And I think the gentleman right next to me takes the cake. I mean, no offense to anybody else. I have learned so much from hanging out with Tom Sewid from Sasquatch Island this weekend. Many aspects of this phenomenon that I have not heard elsewhere. So kudos to you. Give us your background, the tribe you come from, the part of the country or the region that you join us from.
I come from the Kwakwaka'wakw First Nation, North American Indian tribe from northern Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada. But my mother's a full-blooded Cree Indian from the Central Plains of Saskatchewan, Canada.
Okay, I'm going to try out my pronunciations here because I've been practicing them over the last 2 days. Kwakwaka'wakw, is that good?
Perfect.
Okay, and it's Tunakwa.
Chunahua is what we call Sasquatch.
Okay, that is the definite, or that is the name for Sasquatch within your tribe, right?
That's right.
And how far back do these sightings go? They must go more than 100 years.
Go back to the dawn of our creation. So according to the Kwakwaka'wakw beliefs, the Creator created the animal kingdom, and then later on he would send his brother out to transform animals into humans, and a Junakha would be transformed into probably one of the ancestors for one of the tribes. Which one, I don't know.
Okay, but there are multiple names for Sasquatch among Native Americans, First Nations peoples. It varies from tribe to tribe, right?
Oh, definitely, yeah. The Haidas from northern British Columbia coast offshore in Queen Charlotte Islands, Haida Gogih, I believe is what they call it. And down in southern Vancouver Island, one of the tribes call it Hawakwis. It's also known as books, and that's where the confusion comes from my tribe, where some of the Sasquatch people would say that the Quagatoodle or Quagyolt Indians call their Sasquatch Bukwis. Bukwis is a small hair-covered bipedal creature. Chunacha is our Sasquatch.
And when was your first recollection of ever hearing that name or have it be discussed?
Probably when my parents were telling me to behave myself.
Or what would happen?
The Chunacha is always watching, and if you misbehave, act up, pull a temper tantrum, be lazy, don't do your chores, Chunacha is going to come at night and reach the big hairy arm in the window where you sleep and grab you and take you into the forest. That's where it's going to boil you up and eat you.
Yeah. Does that actually happen?
Well, you never know.
You don't want to find out, though, right?
I'm an adult now, so I'm not worried.
It's all about respect, right? And you've respected these beings throughout the years, so you feel they don't mean you any harm.
Some of them do. They don't mean you harm. The rogues, the ones that are aggressive, larger, displaced possibly from being a clan leader. That's why they kind of went postal and got very aggressive. And I believe they take people. But majority of the Sasquatch that, I've heard about encounters and my personal encounters, they just been curious or elusive, where they just blend back into the forest and disappear. They don't want to be around us.
People always say, why have I not seen Bigfoot, or why is there no, body? Why is there no conclusive evidence? And I think the answer to that question is because people aren't actually out in Bigfoot's habitat. They aren't in their environment when they're trying to see a Sasquatch. They're thinking it's going to happen in the middle of the city, or it's going to happen, in wide open spaces, and that's just not the case. I mean, these things have shown the ability to camouflage themselves, and really their habits indicate that they are creatures of the woods.
Oh, absolutely. They've forgotten more about breaking silhouette and using windage to their advantage so they're not smelled, and just being able to instead of walking like a human in the forest, they're hiding behind things and crawling through the ferns and the bush. They're masters at camouflage.
Do they walk differently than humans, or than our race? Because you believe that these are another race of human from another tribe. Do they walk the same as we do?
Not really. The one I saw in night vision FLIR apparatus in the Omaha Indian Reserve, a pregnant female about 6.5 feet tall and a big male over 7 feet tall. What really caught me and intrigued me was how high they would actually lift their feet up when they stepped, so that I could see the soles of their feet entirely as they turned 90 degrees and walked away from us across a field into the tree line.
But do they have 5 toes like we do?
Yep, I could actually. It's one of the things I did. I made sure I counted, and there was 5 toes.
Right. And so you actually lived out in Bigfoot habitat, so to speak.
I lived in the bush. I was a commercial fisherman for 49 years. Traveled the entire British Columbia coast extensively, going up inlets where most humans will never go, and of course we went exploring on shore, clam digging. And every now and then you might come across the evidence of Sasquatch, like broken shellfish shells of the cockle, a type of clam that we'd find on the beach. And we knew it was from Sasquatch. And then clam digging at night, middle of the night with the big low tides, you'd hear a tree being pushed down, or you'd hear vocalizations or a tree knock or a tree break. And you knew it was Sasquatch. You just, paid them no mind and didn't bother them. They wouldn't bother you.
So what did you learn by living out there about the Sasquatch?
I learned how to live like a Sasquatch. I basically tell people I went feral for a time when I disappeared for, months on end out there, where, it's just you forget about things that bother you, like rent payments, telephone bills, mortgages.
You don't have any of that when you live out in the middle of nowhere.
And all you're doing is, I call it bliss, and that's what Sasquatch lives in, bliss, and tune with the environment, living from the environment, and not having to worry about the things we worry about in the concrete world.
You actually had conversations in a language with these beings?
Well, I had a incident where I got spooked out of my kayak camp, where I did kayaking with orca whales on eastern Vancouver Island, and we had 3 or 4 Sasquatch, get aggressive on us, shaking trees, push a big boulder down the hill towards our cookhouse camp. We're at to clear out my sister and my 2 young workers on my tour boat, and the next day we went back in, saw evidence of their tracks and that, and measured where I saw one face to face by my cookhouse. And I went to my family elder and I said, what am I going to do about these Sasquatches always coming near me in the bush? And he goes, just talk to them. And he told me about how he had a Sasquatch that came close to someone from his tribe years ago, and he said the Sasquatch said, yo, and that means hello, how you doing? I don't know who you are in our language. So when I was out one night, I woke up middle of the night by myself in the bush, and I could hear noise. I could smell what I knew was a Sasquatch when the wind changed a bit that night. And knowing that something was close by me, I just said, yo, Weeksas Jonacha. Hello, how you doing, Sasquatch? I don't know who you are. And I heard a reply of Ichman, I'm doing fine. And that's when I knew Sasquatch was just the other tribe. Shamans from all the tribes across North America would interact with Sasquatches, and some tribes still do. And to learn the medicinal remedies and plant life that's going to help you in the forest. So in turn, you have the tribe talking to the Sasquatch back and forth. So in that specific tribal area, if you're going to investigate, learn the local language, how to say hello, I come in peace, I give you a gift, goodbye, I mean no harm. And you'll be surprised what you might get a reaction from Sasquatch if you're close to them.
Did you ever feel threatened by those conversations?
Not that one time, but threatened when they get aggressive, that's for darn sure.
So what will they do when they think that you are a threat? Not you specifically, but generally anybody who they perceive as a threat.
Well, one of the main things most people know is tree knocking. Never ever do that, because when the Sasquatch tree knocks, they're telling you or an animal, stop, turn around, go back where you came from. I'm here right now with my family maybe. So if you hear that tree knock, it'll escalate to tree breaking, tree shaking, possibly things being thrown at you. And in some cases, we hear the bluff charges and the pounding of chest. So those are, and then the expelling of the scent from their armpit glands that tells you like a skunk, get away from me. And you have to heed that warning, turn around and get away from the Sasquatch. They don't want you near them.
So it sounds like there is some misinterpretation when it comes to the tree knocks, because we've seen many accounts of individuals over the years, investigators, people trying to have encounters, taking objects and hitting trees in order, I guess, to attract the attention of a Bigfoot. But that's not something we should do, because that's something that they do.
Well, we've seen with the television show, where they started out in their first seasons and all through their whole series where they were tree knocking constantly. But after 14 seasons, they never did bag and tag up close with a video camera or a still camera or a FLIR, a Sasquatch, because they were tree knocking. They're telling the Sasquatch, just stop, turn around, go back where you come from. And I teach people, don't ever tree knock. Number one, it's disrespectful to the Sasquatch because you're entering their homelands and you're telling them to stop, turn around, and leave. That's disrespectful.
So could a Sasquatch or Tunaqua misinterpret that as another Sasquatch doing that to a human when we try to do it to them?
Possibly, but I think more than likely, when the human's tree knocking, I think they've already smelled you and had a scout on you, and they know darn well it's a hairy bipedal that's making the noise in the forest at night, tree knocking away. And of course, they're not going to come close to you. They're going to keep their distance.
What about messages, other things that they may do, whether it's, besides the tree knocks? There's other things that they do to let us know they're around.
They do have tree structures that are like teepees, and then they have lean-tos up against big trees or else a rock wall. And like I tell people, is study the local Indian tribe where you're investigating the Sasquatch. And you'll find that most Indian tribes, it was taboo for a male to be around a woman when they're menstruating or giving birth. We're not allowed to be around that blood, and some tribes still follow that age-old custom. So Sasquatches, I believe, when a scout or a hunter, Sasquatch is walking around and he sees a teepee structure or a lean-to, right away he'll test windage, go upwind, and go around the female that's giving birth or in menstruation. Every tribe was doing it for thousands of years. Why would Sasquatch not be doing it to this day?
But they also use tree branches not only to conceal themselves, but also to communicate with us that they're there.
Tree breaks, yes. Tree twists, yes. Braids, yes. The stuff they talk about with glyphs and all that, I don't hold any credence to it. To me, if anything, it's if there's an oddity of stick structure in the forest and you're looking for a Sasquatch, well, you're bent over going, oh, look at this glyph. The Sasquatch is sitting there peeking behind a tree watching you. Maybe it's something to deter you away from looking for it.
All right, we got to take a break here from the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest as we're talking with Tom Sewid from Sasquatch Island. More to come here from Baker City, Oregon, right after this.
Into the paranormal.
How long's the break?
We're here from the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest in Baker City, Oregon, talking with Tom Sewid from Sasquatch Island and SasquatchTheLegend.com. We were talking a little bit about, the tree knocks and the structures, and when we see or hear about these reports of branches, limbs, whatever, put into a certain form that might indicate structure. Is that something that the Sasquatch will do? Will they find someplace? Will they gather those materials in which to hide under to conceal themselves? Or is that just not something that they would do?
Like I said, with the females having birth or menstruation, they have those huts. That's why they don't, in most cases, repel the rain or wind or retain heat. There's simply signage saying there's a female in here giving birth or during their cycle, and the males shouldn't be around that. So it's for them to steer upwind and go around them, maybe vocalize, say, it's just me, I'm here, I'm passing by, thank you for putting up the notice. And then when you see the tree breaks and twists, those are markers letting other Sasquatch possibly know that there's another Sasquatch in the area. And then when you get into these, and I've seen them, different structures, and people are trying to decipher it. It's a waste of time. You're bumbling, stumbling, and speculating. Focus on identifying getting close to that Sasquatch group. Never mind trying to decipher what might or might not be there. Try to get that interaction going place so you can get your video cell phone out or a video camera and get those pictures of muscle movement, plaque on chips and teeth, the epidermal ridges on the bottom of their feet, their fingerprints if you're sitting close with them, and possibly the mid-tarsal break. Then you have video conclusive proof of the existence of Sasquatch. And once you get a habituation interaction going like Diane Fossey or Jane Goodall or Leakey, then we can dwell on those, what are those structures, if they're even making them.
Because there are other animals out there who could also be doing that. Not necessarily a Sasquatch.
Oh yeah, as the hairless bipedal creature, we think we know it all. We don't, It's just recently where they found out birds are making these intricate structures that are taking hours to build, and they're hundreds of pounds, so you never know. You might say something is made by a Sasquatch, it might be something else. We don't know.
Okay, about the seashells, are they trying to then get the meat out of the shell in order to eat, or are they trying to get attention?
They go down the beach at low tide at night, generally in Pacific Northwest, and they'll grab an armload of cockles. Cockles, unlike most other clams that have a hole you can shove a knife or a big fingernail in to open it, though they don't have that. They're like a scallop. So they'll bring them to the top of the beach at the high tide mark. It'll probably sit down or on a log or a rock and start smashing the shells together to break them and open to get at the meat. And then the empty shells they leave in a pile. Sometimes they'll pile them up, sometimes they're just spread out. But you can tell it wasn't from a bird or another animal. You know it was from Sasquatch, and that broken shell is signage to say, I'm harvesting at this beach right now during this big tide, low tide cycle. Please move somewhere else.
So when people are hearing what seems like objects being smashed together, that could be, especially if they're near a body of water.
Oh yeah, when I used to run an ecotourism floating native gift store out in my traditional territories, thousands of yachters and kayakers coming in, and every summer I heard people talking about, we're anchored out at night and it's flat calm, and we would hear clicking on the beach. And I'm like, that's not clicking. That's Sasquatch is smashing cockles together.
All right, we got to take a break for the bottom of the hour. We'll be back from the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest here in Baker City, Oregon, talking with Tom Sewid from Sasquatch Island.
Seen anything like that before in my whole life.
Out walked this big thing, and I just froze.
Yes, I was out here hunting, and I'm so startled right now. I think I may have stumbled across a Bigfoot.
Something just growled. Something just growled from the bushes. Okay, I'm kind of scared to move any closer.
I was bear hunting. I was with my buddy. We're out there. It was just a normal day. We saw something. So I shot it.
The truth is far more abnormal than we want to believe. You're headed somewhere between abnormal and paranormal. Into the Parabnormal.
People are definitely encountering something out there. Is it Bigfoot or Sasquatch or some other undiscovered primate? Here from Sasquatch Island is Tom Sewid from the Kwakwaka'wakw tribe up in Vancouver, British Columbia. Did I get that right, Tom?
No, Kwakwaka'wakw.
Kwakwaka'wakw. Okay, so I missed one of the was. Okay, fair enough. Misconceptions. From your perspective, what are some of those things that in the mainstream people have wrong?
We think there's only one Sasquatch in North America.
And that what it is time traveling or something, or going through portals?
Oh, then you get those ones in the woo-woo sector. They're thinking that they're jumping through portholes, cloaking, mind-speaking, turning into orbs, flying in UFOs. I think they just got so bloody scared when they were close to a Sasquatch, seeing it or smelling it and hearing it, that their mind took off on them and came up with these grandiose explanation of what they saw and what took place. And that's what I think about all that stuff.
Is it true that they have very little facial hair?
Yeah, well, all North American Indians, us thoroughbreds, you can count my chest hairs on 2 fingers, and you can pretty much count the facial hair if I didn't shave for 3 weeks, because we have limited facial hair and body hair. And the Sasquatches kept that trait with their face, whereas their bodies are very hairy. And that's how I look at them. They're just, as many tribes say, members of the other tribe is Sasquatch. And that's why when I look at pictures or video, the first thing I look for is facial hair. If it looked like it jumped off the back of a Harley-Davidson motorcycle with a biker beard, or came out of a moonshine camp with a big beard, that's not a Sasquatch. It just looks like any other Indian when it comes to the face. Limited facial hair.
One of the things that you can use to identify those is the oily sheen on the skin.
Oh, absolutely. It's like I was in doubt with one of the videos for many years, and it wasn't until recently when it was digitized or stabilized or whatever that we saw the Sasquatch bend down and pull from the ferns a baby Sasquatch. And that's when I knew that the one I thought had really synthetic looking plastic costume hair, I guess it was the climate, because it's so hot now that I'm in close proximity to it. That film took place. I see how hot and dry it is. I'm a coastal person. It's not as hot, so it explains why it wasn't oily hair. It was sort of synthetically looking because it's so hot out here.
Are you talking about the Freeman film?
Yes, I was in doubt for many years, but it was just recently when Squatch America showed me that new stabilized video that I went, boom, that hits the hammer on the nail. That's a Sasquatch.
Are people under the assumption that Bigfoot are very, very tall, and is that accurate?
I think it's accurate. The ones I've seen, females tend to be under, 6'6" area to a little taller. The males I've seen are all around 7'4". And, I hear stories about the 9-footers, 10-footers, 11-footers, even 16-footers in one case. And I just shake my head because being an ex-grizzly bear and black bear hunting guide, I've had so many clients of mine look at a bear and, oh, look at that big trophy. I'm like, come on now, look at it. It's got Mickey Mouse ears, spiky hair, and a lot of daylight under its belly. It's a young pup. And people's perception of how big an animal is in the forest, because they don't really know it, they come up with these grandiose figures on how big that creature is. And I think most Sasquatch are around 8'5" and under that.
8'5" would be where they top out.
Roughly, from what I've seen in the track evidence and everything, you hear stories of like 19.5-foot tracks and up to 20-inch tracks and that. And anything bigger than that, it's going to be about 8.5 feet. Anything bigger than that, you're going to leave huge evidence of pushes through the foliage and grasses, depressions in the ground. And, we're not seeing that in most cases. Yeah, we're seeing up to about 1,000-pound creature, but we're not seeing what, a 16-foot Sasquatch, as some people talk about, that's got to be close to 2,500 pounds.
Right. So what would be the ideal weight or the range for an acceptable weight for a Sasquatch be, in your opinion?
I think Shaq O'Neal is a good model to use. He's got what size, 16 feet or something? And
right.
And then he weighs how many pounds in his, and he's big man, and add a few more pounds to a creature that's maybe 6 inches taller than Shaq O'Neal, and you probably got a 19.5, 21-inch track, and weighing probably close to 1,000 pounds.
So we talked about, the various Native American names for Sasquatch, but many of these tribes also have stories, legends that have been handed down from year to year, from generation to generation, and even tribal dances after Sasquatch.
Oh, absolutely, especially throughout the Pacific Northwest, from Washington State all the way up to Southeast Alaska. All the Indian tribes have masks and regalia. That's what we call the outfits we wear, regalia. And, my tribe, we bring the Chonach Sasquatch to life in dance and songs at our great ceremonies of potlatch. We share it in celebrations like the Sasquatch conferences like I'm at right here at Blue Mountain and others. So it's, that's what I'm in the industry for, is to educate the non-Indian that if you really want to know about Sasquatch, go interact with your local Indian tribe. Get their protocols and permissions, ask to be invited to their demonstrations of their Sasquatch dances, meet their artists, and hear their stories.
It's all about respect, right?
Yep, number one, respect your local Indian tribe.
And respect the Sasquatch as well.
Yes, because all Indian tribes will tell you, never think of disrespecting them, and don't you ever think of killing one. It's something we will not and should not do, and I don't support or condone any of those want to kill a Bigfoot researchers, as they call themselves, out there.
And so as far as the respect concerns, that means treating the environment with respect, and also, not leaving your trash behind, not being obnoxious and disrespectful, that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. British Columbia, compared to what I've seen here in Pacific Northwest of Idaho, Oregon, and Washington State. Like, come on, people, pick up your trash. Don't leave your empty shotgun shells out there in your beer cans and other things. British Columbia, we call it supernatural, beautiful British Columbia for a reason. We respect our environment. In most cases, we're cleaning up our garbage and bringing it home with us.
Because if not, the Sasquatch might take it on the next people who visit.
Well, it's one reason why they hate us, despise us, loathe us, fear us. They don't want to be around us. What good do we have to give Sasquatch? I was talking to two young Christian missionaries here, mercenaries as I call them, yesterday at the conference, and I asked them, I said, if Sasquatch is confirmed to be human, would you try to convert them to Christianity? Oh, absolutely. And I'm saying, that's so disrespectful, and that's why I'm in my recommendations for regulation and laws pertaining to Sasquatch. One of my major bullets is anyone that tries to convert them to Christianity or any other religion should be fined heavily or sent to prison.
Yeah, we got some applause for that out here, and I agree with you. That's why there are some states who have laws against hunting these. They will kill humans if given the opportunity, or if forced to, which I'm very happy that you've made the comparison to the missing people in the forests, to the Sasquatch.
Yeah, well, you got to look at, Gatling gun was invented for one reason, to kill Indians en masse so that they could take over our traditional homelands for cattle, farming, agriculture, cities, and everything else, and railways. And, me as a Canadian Indian, I wasn't considered a human citizen until 1961, even though I wasn't born. Australia, the Aborigines were flora and fauna until 1974. And look what the U.S. did to the Africans when they brought them over in ships to be slaves, and they're still fighting for the equality. So that's what I'm doing for Sasquatch. I'm advocating, let us know our history so we're not destined to repeat our failures. Because look at the failures that we did to the indigenous tribes of North America, Central America, and South America after contact, and even up until these modern times.
I chuckled during the COVID pandemic when we started seeing these memes pop up with Sasquatches on them, social distance champion. And it got me wondering, can Bigfoot catch a virus like COVID or the flu or smallpox? And you say yes.
Yes, because I asked those questions to the people that most investigators of Sasquatch never ask. When I talk to those native tribes through the years and even nowadays, what do you know about the Sasquatch contracting smallpox, influenza, tuberculosis, Spanish flu like we did? And all of a sudden you see that native elder scratch their chin and go, wow, I haven't thought about that since I was a young kid, when my great-grandfather told me about how the Sasquatches came to our village with their family in their arms and dragging them covered in smallpox, or coughing up the blood of tuberculosis, where our chief would have to say, go get our sick family members and show the Sasquatch clan that we too are sick and we have no remedy. And the Sasquatches would turn and disappear back into the forest. And in some areas, they figured they were almost extinct. Well, in many areas of North America, A lot of Indian tribes are extinct, and we're close to extinction because of those diseases. And we can't make that mistake with Sasquatch. And like we learned from COVID, that's why we have to use our personal protective masks and gloves when we do get to a point of interaction with a clan of Sasquatch.
So, have viruses, you think, taken Bigfoot or Sasquatch lives?
Oh, absolutely. That's why we didn't really see or hear about them until 1967 when Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin filmed Patty, because I was born in 65. My tribe had 800 people. Now in 2024, I've heard we number over 5,000 or 6,000 in the Kwakwaka'wakw Lehota nations. So we Indians, indigenous people of all the Americas, have proliferated like bunny rabbits since the mid-60s, as we're seeing with more encounters, the Sasquatches.
And speaking of one of those viruses, leprosy is also one that would explain some of the spots.
Only
that
in
people
one
see?
area, British Columbia, North Coast region. I had someone who saw a Sasquatch looking at him from the bushes, and he drew the sketch because he was an artist. And he said, "Tom, it looked like this. Its nose and this and that was all mangled up." And I said, "That's leprosy." And he says, "Well, a lot of people up here are talking about our Sasquatches looking like that." But we got to remember, leprosy is in the soil of North America, and it's in armadillos apparently carry it. So is it a sweeping North America? I don't think so. I think it's a regionally based spread of disease among the Sasquatch. And that's an area where they've been known to be very aggressive, which apparently that's what people that suffer from leprosy at later stages get aggressive as well.
A lot of talk these days is about UFOs and disclosure. Is the government going to finally come clean on this? Are they going to release the files? What's going into the vault? Will they finally disclose? It sounds like there is also an active cover-up when it comes to the Bigfoot subject as well.
I don't use the B word. I find it too derogatory for the other tribe. I always use Sasquatch because it's based on an indigenous tribe's name for the creature. But I firmly believe that once they're confirmed to exist, and the government knows that, that's why they're covering up and hiding it, because it would become the third indigenous tribe of the United States next to the Inuit and the North American Indians. And in Canada, they will be the fourth indigenized recognized tribe, for we have First Nations Indians, Inuit, and the Métis, which you call Cherokee in the U.S., have just got their recognition. And we indigenous people in both countries, we cost billions to support, house, Medicare, the list goes on. And they don't want a fourth one in Canada nor a third one in the U.S. because you're going to have hundreds of millions of more going. And now the GOP will be affected because clear-cut logging, fracking, mining, pipeline development, urban established areas is going to be shut down like they did with the marbled murrelet and the spotted owl. And if you want to go expand your cattle ranch and put some more barbed wire and posts in, you're going to have a Sasquatch environmental impact survey that'll probably cost you tens of thousands of dollars. So there's no bloody way the government wants another indigenous tribe recognized in North America.
But you think that one day this will explode and it will be undeniable that this thing actually exists?
That's why we're investigators. That's why we have P1000 Nikons with built-in telephoto lenses and audio recorders and night vision apparatus. A lot of people say, how can you make money off Sasquatch? I'm not making money off Sasquatch. I'm making money off the industry of Sasquatch. You know what it costs for a top-of-the-line FLIR, or let alone the gas to go on a 10-day
You're spending more
mission?
than you're getting out of it.
Not really. Smart businessman always spends
Right.
just enough to make profit.
All right, Tom Sewid from Sasquatch Island and SasquatchTheLegend.com. We'll talk more with him during our Bigfoot Town Hall here from the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Festival.
Into the paranormal.
from the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest, joined by Tom Bennett. Southern Utah Bigfoot Association made the drive all the way out here. I think you traveled the farthest of anybody, Tom. I mean, there's no award for that, but thank you for coming out here. We appreciate it.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
You are not only a Bigfoot researcher, but a musician as well. And we've been hearing your tunes this weekend. Do you actually incorporate that into some of your music as well?
Yeah, a little bit.
Did you have sightings as a child or something like that?
My interest began, I grew up on a farm in Georgia, and I was looking out the window one morning when I was maybe 7 years old, and I saw what looked like a Sasquatch. And over the next quite a few days, I would see it in the same spot. And so I eventually got the nerve to walk out there and take a look. And as I stalked up on this thing with my 20-gauge shotgun at 7 years old, I got closer and closer, and this thing wasn't moving. And I was pretty curious about why it wasn't responding to my presence. And when I got real close, I realized that it wasn't a Bigfoot at all. It was a pine tree that had snapped off in a recent storm at about 8 foot high, and moss had started growing on it. But even within 30 feet, it looked like a Bigfoot. And after that, I just became very curious about them. And now, as I travel around the United States playing music, I always tell people when I'm about to take a break at a show, if they've got an experience, to come tell me about it. But I've had 2 different experiences myself where I'm pretty sure that what I saw was a Sasquatch, and it'd been hard for it to be anything else.
So these were repeat encounters during your childhood?
No, the ones that I saw as an adult that I really think were Sasquatch were one occasion in Gold Bar, Washington, and I was on a specific expedition, and was deep on a logging road when something threw a rock at me, and I picked the rock up, and I could throw pretty well. I grew up playing baseball, and just like a pitcher, I threw this thing fastball right back at it, and I thought it was a shadow, but something did throw the rock until it hit right square in the chest of this thing, and it dropped down on all fours, and in 2 quick movements, it covered about 30 feet and was gone, and I ran. I was terrified. I didn't get out my camera, nothing. I just ran.
What can do that?
I don't know what else would have done that. So that's why I think that one, even though I didn't get a good look at it, I just saw the silhouette. I think that was likely a Sasquatch. And then another time, heading up to Snow Basin Ski Resort in the mountains just east of Ogden, Utah, had a very popular trout fishing spot. It was the week of Christmas, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I saw something standing in the river looking down into the water and kind of swaying around, looked like it was looking for fish.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bridge at that spot. So I had to get over the bridge and off the road before I could stop and go back and get a good look at it. So I did that. I got over the bridge, pulled off to the side, and ran back through the about thigh-deep snow. And whatever had been in the river was now gone, but I could see the trackway going up a very steep mountain on the opposite side. So again, didn't get a good look at it, but it would have been hard for it to have been anything else.
From your knowledge, is it a typical response from somebody when they see one of these things to run for the hills?
I think so. People always say, well, is Bigfoot just blurry? Why do people's pictures always come out blurry? And taking a picture quickly of anything, it's not very likely you're going to get a good photograph. What I've learned is don't try to get a photograph, try to get a video. It's much easier to get your phone out and hit video and just go ahead and film the whole thing and get a still out of it later if you're able to. It works a lot better.
So you wrote a song called I Believe in Bigfoot.
Yeah, for this event, yeah.
This specific event?
Uh-huh.
All right, so let's go ahead and hear that. Tom Bennett.
Okay.
Tom Bennett, I Believe in Bigfoot.
Got
Into the Paranormal store is open. Show off our brand with all sorts of items in the store at paranormalradio.com.
There's a parallel universe, a veil that separates us from all we perceive. True reality. Open the gate, let the truth be known. It's more than meets the eye. We're not alone. Into the paranormal. Into the paranormal. Into the paranormal. Crossover.
Into the Paranormal with Jeremy Scott. Somewhere between the paranormal and abnormal.
Talking with Tom Bennett from the Southern Utah Bigfoot Association. He is a one-man band as well, a nationally touring country and blues artist who has written songs about Bigfoot. How many songs have you written? And even more than that, I think you incorporate some Bigfoot and Sasquatch references into some popular songs as well, because that catches the ear.
Yeah, I just thought of doing that today or yesterday as I was playing. I was singing "Mamas Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys," and I changed it to Sasquatch Researchers.
Right.
And then I started throwing it in other songs here today at this Blue Mountain Bigfoot Festival.
So were you interested in Sasquatch or music first?
Both for a long, long time. I mean, I grew up in the era of Harry and the Hendersons, you know.
Yes.
So I grew up watching that movie, and every little boy, I think, wants to see a Bigfoot. So I always had the interest, but I don't know if I took it seriously and believed it was really something that was a species that actually existed until I was quite a bit older.
Right. So something that you entertained earlier in life is, just a childhood fantasy, but
Sure.
but the more you looked at the evidence, do you find that it is overwhelming at this point?
Yeah, to me, I mean, there's just those little things that have been so well searched out, like, when they identified dermal ridges in the foot castings and then showed the uniqueness of those and how they really are as unique as our fingerprints. That's very hard to refute. And also things like when a linguist analyzed the Sierra sounds and said this has all the hallmarks of language, that you can't easily disregard things like that.
Yeah. Scott Nelson, I believe, is who you're referring to. The Sierra sounds, which were captured by Ron Moorhead.
That's right.
You're familiar with those sounds?
Yeah.
What do you think of those?
I mean, like I said, they sound really interesting, and even if you're not trained, which I'm not a linguist, but you do hear that it sounds, to me it sounds like somebody trying to sound like they're talking in Japanese. That they do call it the samurai chatter, and I think that's a very reasonable name for what you're hearing there. And just hearing that it was analyzed by somebody who does have expertise in that and what he had to say was very interesting to me.
So what kinds of stories do people come up and tell you at your performances?
Well, like I mentioned, so it's not uncommon for me. I sing in little bars and music festivals and all kinds of events all over the country. These days, I mostly do regional things in Utah, Arizona, Nevada. And before I take a break at my shows, I'll often ask people in the audience over the microphone if they've got a Bigfoot story to let me know when I'm on my break, and people will tell me their experiences. And the last two that I was told actually were told to me about a year and a half apart, but they were about the exact same experience from different people's perspectives, but the same incident. And that was a night in New Harmony, Utah, which is a small meadow farming community north of St. George, between St. George and Cedar City, where something was just kind of watching people in the twilight hours. There was strange sounds being made. I often hear that Bigfoot will mimic the sounds of other creatures, and what was described to me was a combination of a cow's moo, or like the bellow of a cow, a coyote's yips, and a human yell, kind of all rolled into one, but with that great voluminous capacity to it. And that night, somebody actually shot at whatever was making the noise and took off after it in their pickup truck. And I got to talk to the people who shot at it and a woman who heard it from her perspective.
Do you put more weight behind those kinds of experiences where you're hearing multiple witnesses say the same thing, or people who maybe even don't even know each other who are starting to, when what they tell you is similar to another person's story?
Yes, to me, that automatically lends a degree of credibility that wouldn't otherwise be there. Like in this case, it was people who didn't know each other. They lived in the same small community, but they don't know each other. And the stories were told to me a year to a year and a half apart, and the accounts corroborated each other. And I've also had that happen just outside of Zion National Park, where within 24 hours, I got 2 different people emailing me about one crossing a little 2-lane middle of nowhere highway in a town called Virgin, Utah, right outside of Zion. There are Bigfoot sightings that have happened in Zion, but they're not nearly as prevalent as a place like Yellowstone or the Pacific Northwest. But we do get encounters in southern Utah.
So tell us about the Southern Utah Bigfoot Association and your goal.
Well, we just, it's just a lot. I always tell people that with squatching, you can't lose. Because even if you get out there and you don't experience anything, you just got out in nature and you've had a good time. And I've got a 5-year-old daughter, and she's grown up with all of this. And to her, you know, a Bigfoot's just as real as any other creature because she's grown up with this influence. But she, it's me and her and my fiance, and we've got a couple of other people that are interested and will pop up every now and again. There's a Navajo gentleman that'll go down on the reservation and do his own research that I just met a week ago. So we get people that pop up with stories, not too often, but Utah does have encounters, especially a little bit further north of us when you get into the Uintas and the Wasatch. Provo Canyon, it's a hot spot. So that part of Utah is a little bit more, but we do get encounters in the desert too.
So is the minister going to be dressed up as a Sasquatch during the wedding?
Maybe, that'd be kind of cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
It's all Sierra sounds. Like, I don't know what you just said, but I do.
Yeah, right, I do. So other reports from the area, are there certain areas that come from, southern Utah?
Yeah, so southern Utah is a very desert environment. I mean, within 4 miles from my house, we've got massive sand dunes, and I live 22 miles from Zion National Park. And then also just outside of St. George, there's the Dixie National Forest, which is pretty big. I don't know the acreage of it, but it's a good-sized national forest, and it's at a higher elevation. So it's very alpine up there, and there are sightings that take place up there. That forest connects with other forests that run up to the center part of the state, where there's even an ape canyon in southern Utah, or central Utah. So there's places that have names that indicate some kind of activity like that. And then running down into Arizona, you get what they call the Mogollon Monster, which is the Mogollon Rim, which is a very wooded part of the Navajo Nation where a lot of sightings come out of there as well.
So in I Believe in Bigfoot, you talked in some of the lyrics about why there has not been a body. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, there's different theories on that. One thing I saw that was very interesting to me was one of the early hominids. I wish I could remember the name right now off the top of my head. If I got out the social Instagram page for Southern Utah Bigfoot Association, I did a post about it. But there was a certain hominid that they've discovered that definitely buried their dead, and that is a sign of advanced intelligence when animals bury their dead. And humans are very ritualized. We have various religions and ceremonies, and I think that it wouldn't be too unlikely that maybe they do similar things. And I think they bury their dead. And also we know that in most environments, bodies just don't really last that long.
Yeah, and I think it was Scot and Hannah yesterday who told us it's just a matter of days before you have to collect this or it's going to be washed away. It doesn't matter really the climate, the terrain, or where you're at.
Mm-hmm. And I have seen posts on the internet where things have been found, and usually it'll come up like, after analyzation that it's not Bigfoot. Or I think it was in Washington last.
But how can you tell something's not Bigfoot when we don't have a specimen to compare it to? All we can do is say it's not human or it's unidentified.
Yep, that's true. I know they found a part of a skull last year. I think it was in Washington, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, it's a Bigfoot skull!" And yeah, I mean, it looked like it was, and it turned out to be an actual gorilla skull that was placed in the woods. They claimed for part of a TV show. So things like that happen where things are faked, and it usually will come to light. I remember Dr. Jeff Meldrum saying that when they DNA test things that are claimed to be Sasquatch body parts, they always come back as human DNA. And that would make sense, as Tom was just talking to you before. A lot of people believe these are just a different tribe of human. And even if the DNA is very, very close to ours, like all primates are, those markers can be very subtle to identify.
I mean, if we're offspring, we would, or their offspring, or we're their offspring, or something, or they're related, or they're another species, you would expect to find some of that in the DNA.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you would have to. And most animals on this planet share pretty common DNA anyway, especially if they're in the primate family.
Have you done some work with Dr. Meldrum?
Well, yeah, we did. So I met him quite a few years ago before I really even had a strong interest in the Sasquatch stuff. I was playing outside of a Comic-Con in Salt Lake City, and somebody gave me a couple tickets, and I went in, and not much of that really appealed to me, but Dr. Jeff Meldrum was there, and he had a booth, and the Bigfoot thing really didn't appeal to anybody at this event, but I saw him and went over to his table, and we spoke for over an hour, and he was just very hospitable and obviously knowledgeable. And I'd never heard of him at that point, and I just thought, man, how cool that this real scientist, this real biologist is studying evidence in a very scrutinous, scientifically sound way. And I went and saw him in Idaho, and he came out to lunch with me and let me interview him on camera for about an hour, and went over to his lab, and he let me ask any questions I wanted to, and just really, really great at, if anybody has that interest, giving whatever time and experience he can to answer your questions.
All right, Tom, where do we find your music? Where do we find out more about the Southern Utah Bigfoot Association, that sort of thing?
All the different social medias. I'm pretty good as far as the music about posting on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Southern Utah Bigfoot Association, Instagram, YouTube. Those are the two main sources.
All right, we'll let you catch your breath, and we're going to do the Bigfoot Town Hall here in just a couple moments.
Okay.
All right?
I got maybe 200-300 yards from the truck. And that's when I saw Bigfoot.
Something just killed my dog. Something killed your dog? My dog went flying through the air over the tree. I don't know how it did it. Okay.
There have been several instances where they have been visited, virtually terrorized, by a creature they claim to be Bigfoot.
What the? Hold! Did you see that?
Okay, I mentioned that there were, everybody here is going to hear it again, but I mentioned there's this contest now to create fake pictures and videos. Actually, a $5,000 bounty is being awarded to someone. And we talked about this yesterday. Fake videos, fake pictures, clouding the honest research that is being done within this community. And it seems like this is just going to add more fuel to the fire. It's going to give people another reason in which to put this fake content out there. And it's largely because of artificial intelligence. That cannot be a good thing. Do you guys agree?
Absolutely. I agree. Yeah, it just muddies the water, and it makes it harder for us when we do get clear evidence. You know, it just is. This is one of the weirdest endeavors I think I've had in my life, and I've worked in the academic world for years, and it's one of the few places where you're doing research and people are actively trying to fake things for you, and I think this is one of the few, if not the only, type of research in the world where people are trying to fool you. So it's hard.
Yeah,
it's an uphill battle.
It happens, and it's unfortunate. Tom, what were you saying earlier? You had hoped something had happened to these individuals?
Well, we can only hope the fraudsters like Todd Standing and those that want to kill and shoot Bigfoot, hopefully they're going to get together and they'll shoot the faker and we'll put an end to both of them.
Right. All right, gentlemen, what do you think about the abilities of Bigfoot? We know that these things are definitely intelligent. They certainly have shown us that in many regards. Others have actually claimed that they have been in communication with Bigfoot telepathically. So let's go to Tom Bennett first from the Southern Utah Bigfoot Association. What do you think? Are Bigfoot telepathic? Can they communicate without speaking?
To the extent if you see a giant, hairy, powerful animal in the woods, it's going to convey a sense of fear to you, that's for sure. The two encounters that I had, one of them was close enough that I didn't even think about getting out my camera. I just ran. But I try to remain open-minded about things like that because I don't know for sure. But I would say, just using reason and logic, if other animals on this planet are not communicating telepathically, I would imagine it's probably the same with this Sasquatch. It's probably not communicating telepathically, but it does probably elicit strong emotions that could be taken as being very direct communications. That'd be my thought on that.
All right, Robert, are Bigfoot telepathic? What do you think?
I've never been able to telepathically communicate with one, so I'm not the best person to answer that. And I'm not the one who has those gifts. It's kind of out of my element with that.
Scott?
There's a lot of really cool scientific stuff you can look into that other animals do that's not telepathic, like elephants and cougars can growl so low you can't hear it, but you can feel it. So if Bigfoot has that ability, which I think they do because they got a big vocal range, so they can growl so low that you feel it and it elicits that fight or flight in you. So we've had several reports of people who saw a Bigfoot and then suddenly came to running a half a mile away from it going, I don't remember starting to run. So I don't think it's telepathic. I think there's actually a physical thing that happens.
Tom, you've lived out in the bush. You've had some encounters vocally in that you've spoken to these beings and they have spoken back, but has it ever happened without speaking?
Answer to your question, no. And 3 times having looked Sasquatch, been face to face, eye locked with them 3 times, and they grimaced at me those 3 times, and a multitude of other stories about the smile, which is actually a grimace. It's basically like us putting our hand up and putting our middle finger up when they grimace at you. So in all of the multitude of those reports, there's no telepathic connection going on. So, I think it's just people that got so scared they messed their pants and they came up with these grandiose stories about being telepathic and mind speaking. I don't hold any salt with that.
So individuals who say that they have had vocal encounters and they are convinced that these were with Sasquatch, should we put any weight behind those stories?
Vocal encounters, like hearing them is what you're asking? Well, yeah, I believe that Sasquatch has a language. They have their own language, but
the question is, from a vocal encounter, jumping to the conclusion that it is a Sasquatch.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of mistakes that people make too. Like cougars scream like women. And if you ever heard the sounds a fox actually makes, it is wild. Foxes are weird.
So, Robert, former park ranger, you probably have heard all sorts of sounds imaginable out there. Very little of them are Sasquatch.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise out there, but I have to add this. Undisclosed location, hillside. 9 months earlier, I heard the Sierra sounds, thought they were kind of made up and funny. And then 9 months go by, I'm on a hillside by myself. Actually, I was with Bobo on the hillside. And we cooked some bacon, ate bacon, cooked bacon, ate bacon. And then we waited till it was really late. And then we sat back to back, which really is not back to back. It's more my back to his lower side. But he's a lot taller. And then we hear, and that was the first time I heard the samurai talk in the field. Before, I thought it was just made up stuff. So, and I have no explanation for that, but I know barred owls could sound like monkeys.
Can you give us that again? Yeah.
Would you like me to quote that again?
No, what it sounded like.
Got it.
All right, Tom, does that sound like anything that you've experienced out there in the bush?
No. Mainly the ones up my territory, they mainly whoop and they chatter a bit, but I always use the comparison of the Gods Must Be Crazy comedy from the 80s, that little bushman with his warbling, lip-smacking, tongue clicking. That's what they sound like up in my territory. But, I've heard the Sierra sounds, I've heard other recordings, of course, that are all through the internet, and I think, Sasquatch are just the other tribe. And like every Indian tribe in North America, whether it be states, provinces, or territories, they all have different dialects. So that's how I look at Sasquatch. They're just the other tribe. They have their own dialect, but they live in the same territory they've lived in for probably thousands of years, sharing it with the local Indian tribe. And in turn, that's why we know that they had interactions, and still do in some tribes, between the tribe members and Sasquatch, especially the shamans that are learning their trade. So, if you look at my language, Kwakwala, and compare it to other tribes from the Four Corners and in between in Sasquatch Island, North America, they're not similar in any way, shape, or form.
We did have a question that came in via text. Do Bigfoot use body language? Go ahead, Robert.
We all use body language. Some species use nothing but body language. The dogs are notorious for that. Positions, angles, everything. We do it too. But why not? Even birds will posture back and forth, get messages across. Except the ones where I'm camping and sleeping, they yell too, and they don't let us sleep at all.
Have you experienced seeing body language among Sasquatch, Tom Sewid?
Yeah, grimaced at me.
What about you, Scott?
Grimace also. That's a common thing. I think I'm not sure what it means. Tom probably does a little bit more than I do. But yeah, that's a common thing. Tom Bennett here just told us a story about one grinning at him. That the guy saw one grinning at him. And yeah, I think it's more of a grimace. And yeah, they do have body languages.
So anybody's thought, are they trying to communicate amongst themselves, or are they trying to communicate with us?
They're communicating with us. When they grimace at you, it's no different than a dog or a coyote or a raccoon showing its hackles up and its teeth being bared. It's telling you the same way as a human puts his hand up in the middle finger. That's what that means. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to decipher that they're not happy with you being in their space, so it's best to turn around and walk away.
Tom Bennett, how do you interpret the story that you told us earlier, that Scott just mentioned?
Well, in that particular encounter, there was no aggression otherwise shown. This person was with the Sasquatches for a while, and eventually had to crawl out of the area due to having a broken leg. And I think in more encounters that I'm aware of than not, the primary emotion that's being shown from the Sasquatch seems to be one of curiosity. There's a lot of talk about them kind of swaying back and forth, and it's like, well, think about it. I got a 5-year-old. We play hide and go seek, and I'm trying to see her. You're moving back and forth, And I think these Sasquatch, they're very curious about us, just like we're curious about them. So there's a lot of curiosity, and there is a lot of talk about a lot of encounters you'll read about bluff charges, which is something that gorillas do too. They're not really going to hurt you. They could, but they're going to run forward and try to intimidate you out of the area.
We talked earlier about, Bigfoot have been known to kill people, so that means that they must be abducting people, taking people somewhere, and in some cases terrorizing them. What do you think about that, Scott?
Well, I think there are people, and just like people, there's good ones, there's bad ones, there's rogues, and so a lot of times you just don't know which one you're going to run across in the woods.
Tom, have you ever been terrorized by the beings?
I had aggressive encounter with 3 or 4 of them. They chased us out of my sea kayak camp on Vancouver Island east side. And there's one we call Crease, and because he hangs out on Crease Island and the next 2 islands beside it in off northeastern Vancouver Island. But I've warned people that he's a rogue. A rogue is a displaced clan leader Sasquatch, because that's nature's code, God's code, that there's always a strengthening in the species by, new blood genes coming into the family unit. And when, like any other human, when they get, told to get the beep out of the house by the wife and they don't see the children, they lose most, if not all, of their bank account, their roof above their heads, their vehicle. They're getting attacked by the courts and social services. Some of those humans go rogue. I know, I went like that. And it's a human trait. Something snaps in your head where you want revenge, and you get very aggressive. And that's what I believe a rogue Sasquatch is. Displaced clan leader who's gotten bigger, more aggressive, and some of them kill just for the sake of killing. And those, I think, are the ones that are taking some of the humans that go missing. And then, like any other human group in the world, we know of the cannibals. There was cannibal tribes all over every continent other than Antarctica, and even my tribe at a certain time thousands of years ago. That's why we have a ceremonial ritualistic society called Hamatz based on that. So if we were doing it and the Inuit were doing it and other tribes, well, it stands to reason there might be a tribe or two in North America of Sasquatches that they like beans, human beings. They're stupid, easy to catch, and tender.
Well, this is right in your wheelhouse. Let's stick with Tom here for just a minute, because he's up from the British Columbia area, and the very famous case of Albert Ostman, who in 1924 claimed to be held captive for 6 days by these beings. What do you say about that?
There's also Skookum Jim on the west coast of Vancouver Island. And there's the totem pole, that you would call it, in front of the ceremonial big house in the south end of Vancouver Island in Victoria, of a Chunach, a Sasquatch, holding a baby. That was from a copulation between a male Kwakwakiwak tribe member and a Chunach, a Sasquatch, and that was the baby in their arms. So, like I said, with rogues, you got the ones that have snapped and they're aggressive and possibly cannibals, and then you have the other ones, like what you mentioned with Ostrom, that are curious. The big male was, playing with his coffee and ended up playing with his snuff tin, and that's what snuffing it and ended up making him cough and gag and gave him the ability to escape and get away from them. So, curiosity, I think that's a lot of the traits, and possibly them taking people. Vancouver Island, a few years back, we had a young boy go missing, and one of my team members, her and her husband, had audio recorders some 25 miles away from where the kid was taken, and at timestamp middle of the night, you can hear, "Let me go, let me go." That's all we got. Middle of Timbuk nowhere, up by my sea kayak camp, which is my Sasquatch investigation camp now. But here's a young lad saying, "Let me go." And yet one went missing within a year and a half of that audio recording. So maybe he got captured by them and, he's still with the clan, or maybe he was just a walking refrigerator, and when they needed protein, they did what they needed to do to survive, and they ate him. Who knows?
All right, let's go to former Park Service Ranger Robert Leiterman again. Tell us where you served.
Oh, as my job?
Yeah.
Yeah, well...
I hope you got paid for it.
Well, I did. I started out in seasonal National Park Service, and then I got on permitted with the state of California. So I worked all over Northern California and Central California, by 5 different locations. And my last one was in Humboldt County, at Humboldt Redwood State Park.
Did anybody ever come to you and tell Bigfoot stories?
Well, since I was giving interpretive programs, after the program I would give on the subject, they would come over and share their stories. I even had, like, the Burlington campground, it's the only campground that's open in the winter time. They would close all the loops except for a few. And that's when we kind of get some screams from the other side of the creek, and there's no access, the bridges are out. So we get some visitors come in and go, what kind of animal do you have that screams really loud and like at 2 in the morning? So that was kind of interesting conversation.
Did you ever have any missing persons cases?
Well, we have people get lost in the park, but...
Ever been found?
Some have not.
Why does the National Park Service not keep a database of this?
Well, I was a seasonal for the National Park Service, so I don't work for them anymore, but I work for the state, and we have our missing persons reports that we submit and write. But I mean, it goes into the park files. The department in Sacramento has all those files.
Yeah, but they're not very forthcoming with that. For instance, because it would hurt tourism if we knew how many people were actually going missing in parks. Do you agree?
Are you talking conspiracy theory over here?
I'm talking real life. Something's happening to these people when they go into the woods and they don't come out. They go behind a tree and they don't come out the other side. They're walking down a trail and they just go away. So I'm open to all theories. I mean, maybe they entered a portal. Maybe they were snatched by a cougar. Maybe they were taken by a Bigfoot. But if you told people that was happening to you, I'm guessing the Park Service, and I know you worked for the state, but wouldn't make as much revenue.
Everything affects revenue. Let's take when the Jaws movie came out, less people went swimming for a few weeks, and they kind of get back into it again. But I'm pretty sure Pilates has all the answers you need. He has 2 books out. Check them.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what his opinion. I think it's changed from what I knew a couple of years ago. He wasn't leaping to conclusions, and now it seems like he's leaping to conclusions. So who really knows? All right. Time for final comments from each of you on anything we've discussed. If it's whatever you want to say, go ahead, Tom.
Well, I think the important thing is that if any of your listeners have had an experience, there are organizations all over this country. Reach out, tell your story. Don't be afraid. You can do it anonymously, or you can let the world know who you are. Even if it seems odd, contact one of these organizations and let us know. Even if it happened a long time ago, we love to hear your stories. We will listen and treat you with respect.
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I have to agree with Tom there. Please give us your reports. We have our website, squatchamerica.com. You can submit your reports there. And what we're doing right now is collecting reports because we're analyzing them for commonalities so we can figure out the culture of these Bigfoot, how they live, trying to figure out what their daily life is like. So, and we can do that through reports and things. So submit reports. We need to hear from you.
Yeah, I agree with that. Go to my website, sasquatchisland.com. At the bottom of the homepage, you'll see the Vancouver Island Sasquatch map, and you hit the icon for silhouette. That's a sighting. Footprint, of course. What do you call those things you speak into? Loudhailers. That's for a vocalization report. And then there's also the Canadian Sasquatch map, and soon we'll have the Olympic Peninsula map going up. We've already completed it. It'll be up on the website pretty quick. And I'm working at SasquatchLegend.com in Forks, Washington on the peninsula, and I'd love to hear your reports, especially the white ones, something I'm working on. But by all means, chatter like a Sasquatch. Come forward with your reports.
All right, Robert, bring us home.
All right. Parks are for you. I think you guys should get out and enjoy the outdoors. And you should do a little homework first. When you get out there, you should know what you're looking at, what you're expecting. A lot of people don't really know what to expect or what animals are living there, and they hear things and they kind of come to conclusions. But a little bit of homework doesn't hurt, and to know about the area and stuff. But that's my recommendation is get out away from the computer screen, get out of the basement, get out there and experience it, and sit down and not say a word and listen to sounds, breathe deeply and relax and enjoy the outdoors.
Well, I want to thank each and every one of you for your participation. It has been a true honor to be a part of this festival with you out here in Baker City. I consider you my friends. I hope we will stay connected and that our paths will cross sometime over the years and decades if we have that much long left on this earth. And again, thank you to Scot and Hannah for putting this wonderful event together. It's a labor of love. I know it's hard work, and it goes year-round. And so thank you again to Squatch America, to Scot and Hannah Violette, and everybody who has supported it, from the sponsors, the local community. We appreciate everybody coming out. From the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Fest here in Baker City, Oregon, I'm Jeremy Scott. Good night. God bless.